Occasion special call meeting for Thursday, May 3rd, 2018 at the Central Office Auditorium, 1 p.m. This meeting is now called to order. We do have a quorum in place with all members in attendance. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
It has been moved and probably second that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? Those who are in favor, let's see by show of hands. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Pitts to come forward, if you don't mind, and give the process to the board so that we can move forward with the interviews for the candidates.
Good afternoon.
Good
No.
afternoon.
In your folders, you have a copy of the questions. So before we bring anyone in, we need to narrow down the questions if you choose to do so. Right now, you have 14 questions, and that's quite a few. Let me explain what you have in your packet. You'll see some questions are denoted by an asterisk. And if it's an asterisk, one asterisk there, that means that that question was submitted by the mayor.
Okay. One asterisk.
One.
Okay.
And you have a note down there as well that explains that.
Okay.
If there are two, then it was sent in from someone from the public, so it could be a stakeholder.
Okay.
So what I'd like for you to do right now before we get started is to let Mr. Porterfield know which questions we're going to actually ask. Let Mr. Porterfield know which questions you'd like to ask, because we have to ask the same questions of every applicant. We can't deviate. So let's take just a few minutes to read through the questions and let's circle the ones that you would like for us to actually consider for each applicant.
I kind of, number 11, I understand the reason for that question. I just don't necessarily, I think it could be worded differently. It says, have you ever been involved in deficit financing? And then the second one, what is your philosophy on deficit spending? I think anybody would say they don't like deficit spending or, you know, so I feel like there needs to be a deeper, more, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but does anybody, a better way to expand on that?
Well, we're not allowed
Right.
to do deficit spending, so I don't, that question is odd. Yeah, well.
I think that it needs to be replaced by something about, we got plenty, okay. So just strike number 11.
Well, if that's what you,
Do y'all feel that way?
I do.
Okay, so strike the there, okay. Okay.
How about, like they struck that one, how about if I could place one in and replace it?
Okay,
Can we replace it?
As long as we're going to ask it of every applicant.
Okay.
But we don't want to use all 14 of the questions.
Absolutely.
I thought we were just trying to get rid of some.
Narrow
so
them
we don't
down.
have to replace
Well,
this.
actually, right now, we have 13.
I guess one of the questions that I'm looking for, Mr. President, is I'd like to know, I would like each of the candidates to describe their leadership style. I think that that's very important. It's not, it's just one that I feel like we need to, I would like all 4 candidates, in their own words, to describe their past ways of their leadership style.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to replace number 11 with describe your leadership. We'll put describe your leadership style.
And maybe give some examples of your district leadership in the past.
Well, we need to keep some. I definitely think we ought to keep 3.
Okay, could I want to share one and see if we can
Keith.
replace that number 11 with this question I'd like to ask each candidates. And that is, and I'll read it out.
Just replace.
Okay, let's add another one in, and I would like to have answer or address. And that question would be, how would you ensure that the policies and practices in this district are implemented throughout such that they will become systemic and systematic?
You want to send that to us in writing?
Oh, my God.
I'm kidding,
Yeah.
Robert.
How would you ensure
That
policies?
policies and practices are implemented throughout the district such that they become systemic and systematic.
Is that number 14?
How would you,
I guess you would call it 14
Let's
because
call
we
it
got,
14 for now.
we'll call it 14.
All of them to make sure we're asking this question.
We'll call it 14.
That's gonna
14, we'll call it 14. And we'll replace it with, describe the leadership style with number 11. Okay.
have you got all that down, Ms. Pitts, for number 14?
How would you ensure policies and practices are implemented throughout the district so that they are systematic and systemic?
Yeah, systemic and systematic throughout.
Let
And I want to-
let that
you
be
know,
Robert's question.
Certainly, that's fine. What?
That would be your
That'd be
Yeah,
your
that would be my
question.
question. That would be my question.
Good.
Okay, I can handle that. I'll handle that for you.
We're all glad about that.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Dr. Keith?
I'd like, this is my first time to say this, so I'd like to keep number 4 and number 6. And if we could ask each of them how they left their budget in the red or the green
Okay, let's go back. Start.
in the last place they were superintendent.
Okay, let's go back. You said something about boards.
Now, the glancing over this, I like question number 4 and 6.
You like number 4 and 6.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would-
Everyone else good with that? 4
And it's 6.
and 6. Okay, and then you wanted to add one?
If there's room, if not, I think we know, but I don't know I'd like to know what, I don't know the other 3, where they left their, when they were superintendent somewhere else, was their budget in the red or green? And did they leave a failing school or not?
And certainly, one thing we want to make sure, Ms. Pitts, is that we do ask the question that was submitted by the public as well as those that were submitted by the mayor. Want to make sure those
I agree.
questions are asked.
And that would be 7, 8, and 9.
So we're doing 7, 8, 9?
I meant school
Yeah.
system.
Okay.
7, 8, and 9. That's
Yes,
correct.
we'll keep it.
So we're looking at so far 4, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I want to keep 3.
You want to keep 3. Okay.
I don't know why we can't keep all of them.
Well, you just scratched number 11 now. Okay, remember
Well,
that.
you know.
But listen, you remember we scratched 11,
But you did.
But we replaced it.
but we replaced it. Okay.
So far, all we're saying is add.
Okay,
So-
guys, let's try this. Everyone look at question number 1 and let's decide if we want to keep it.
You know what? I think we can get to that later, as my
Yeah.
grandmother used to say.
Because I think we all know how.
Look at number 2, let's decide if we would like to keep it.
I think this is a question more to the board members rather than to a superintendent, because this
I
board
agree.
should know.
All right?
This
let's try
board
number
should
2.
know. Okay,
Let's try number 2.
okay.
We're keeping 3, you've already decided that. We're keeping 4.
Now, excuse me, can I go back to number 2? And this is just a suggestion. Replacing that one, can we put in there, and maybe that, it may not fit, but putting in there, how will the superintendent build relationships with the community, the board, as well as the teachers?
Hey, Erica, check out number,
Which one?
seemed like there was one, because I agree, that's a very good question. Well,
Well, how?
You got here, I think you could do something with number 10. What you would do, I think you could
Take
add
out
on
effective
number
school.
10. Just redo number 10, Erica,
Yes.
in terms of how you want.
Redo number 10.
You redo number 10 how you want to ask it.
And that's how will they build relationships with the community, the board, as well as the teachers?
Why don't we just, not just say teachers, let's say the staff, because you
Staff,
got.
staff, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
staff.
fine.
How would you build relationships with the board, community, and staff?
That's it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that would be inclusive of everyone.
Okay,
Okay,
I like that.
yeah.
Right, so far we agreed with 3, 4, what about 5,
I think let's get to that later.
okay?
What do y'all think?
We can get to that later once we start discussing that, you know, we've got to address curriculum anyway after this study. So I think we can deal with that once the study
Let's
is.
strike 5,
Yeah, we can strike 7.
we've already agreed to keep 6,
That's correct.
7.
7, 8, and 9, we must keep.
Okay,
Mhm.
10.
We'll change
Change
10
it.
to say,
Erica will handle that.
superintendent build relationships with the board, community, and staff, and that will be your question.
Yeah, Erica.
I think number 12 is better for our CSFO interviews.
Okay?
What do y'all think?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the number 11 that we changed. And, Ms. Snowden, that would be your question?
Describe
Describe
leadership style.
Yes, please.
Mhm.
Number 12, we're gonna strike, is that correct? Yes.
Yeah,
Keep that for next week for the CFOs.
Okay.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah, that's right.
Question number 13, keep or strike?
I would keep it.
It's all right.
I would keep that.
What do we do with 10?
I would keep 13.
Remember we added, how would you build
Yeah, keep
relationships with the board, community, and
And then you added a
Staff.
14 and a 15, so what will you renumber?
Right.
14.
Well, not
15.
really, because
Wait,
12 has
well,
been
yeah,
scratched
yeah,
now.
we
You can
replaced
really make one of them 12. You can make the described leadership 12, 11. You can make the, my question number 12, which I would ask, how would you ensure?
Right.
We can change that to 12 rather than 14. Okay.
Okay, then our next step is to decide who's asking which questions so that we remember.
Okay, okay, let's do this then.
Okay?
Number 3, who's, would you take that, Lisa? We just go down the road until, would you take the first, or you got a number that you would
Well,
rather
I
have?
had 4 or 6. So
You
what's
got
one of
4 and
those?
6. Okay, you already have one. You will take 3. Okay, we've got, Eleanor's gonna do 3.
What about me? You just get me.
What, but I was looking for 3 and someone to take it. And
Well,
Eleanor
that's
said
so hard.
she wouldn't wanna go
Well,
for
that's
it.
fine. She took it.
she wanted 4.
She wanted 4.
Hey, ladies
I'll
and
take
Erica
5.
has hers. You got 5, Mary?
Yeah, well, no, 6.
You got 6.
Yes.
Okay, 7 has to be added.
Mr. Porterfield, I know you said we need to keep 7 and 8, but y'all, those are the same basic
7 and 8
questions.
are very closely related.
I think,
I think if
You
you.
can combine those two?
those.
Well, if you answer one, it's gonna answer the other.
I agree.
Okay,
So I think, 8 is better than 7. Sorry, Mayor.
right, but it includes what he asked.
More inclusive.
It includes what he asked.
So drop 7.
So drop 7, pick up 8. Now, Mary has 6. Who would like 7? I mean 8,
Well,
I'm sorry.
8.
8. Who wants 8?
I'll do 8.
Okay, that's you. Okay, Durden. What about 9? Who wants 9?
I would like that one.
Okay, that's for you, Melissa.
And then Erica, you're gonna get number 10, right?
Erica has 10. Okay,
And
now,
I'll do 13.
And then I'll do 11, because remember, that's that.
okay.
Leadership style.
So I should just have 1 to do it, that's 12. So, that's it, wouldn't it?
Put me down for 13.
Mary, you want one of mine?
No, I'm good.
I have you down, Erica,
sure?
for 10,
I said, and I'll take 13.
and you take 13?
Who's doing 13?
Erica
Erica.
is. Okay, let me read over so everyone knows the question. Okay, I've got them all covered now. 3, Eleanor. 4 is going to be Lisa. The 6 is Mary. The 8 is Durden. The 9 is Melissa. 10 is Erica. 11 would be myself.
Melissa.
11 is, wait a minute.
Me.
now. Oh, yeah, right. 11 is Melissa. I'll have 12. And then Erica will come back with 13. Everybody's got that?
Okay, what about the question that you said, well, if you need the bill, did you have a family school, did you still want that one?
Number what now?
Oh, yeah, we don't, which one is that? The last, we can do that the last one, I
It
guess.
would be right before the last one, it would be right before, Ms. Smith's question.
So what number would that be?
That would be 14, and then, Erica's question is actually 13, that one would be 14. I'm sorry, vice versa.
Wait a minute.
You remember she had two questions. Her second question was, where did you leave your budget and did you have failing schools?
Whose
No,
question?
no. Did you leave a failing system?
Did you leave a failing system?
What question, that would be added one.
Okay,
That
so
would be-
right after number 11, which is Ms.
So this would be number 12.
I'm 12 already.
Yeah. then you
I'm
leave
12. Erica is
Then-
13, you will be 14 on that one. You just have to be 14 on that one, everything else.
What is the question?
14.
Did you leave a failing?
And 14 will be,
I just
Lisa.
think failing system, to define what a failing system is.
If you left a failing system, I think the public has a right to know that if they, I don't know if they did or not, but if they did leave one and are coming to a failing one, I think we need to know that. I think
But who's,
Based
Well-
on whose definition?
right, thank you.
absolutely,
if
what's
they,
failing
if
is.
they left us, y'all can define it however you want.
No,
I
that's
just-
what we're
you
asking
define
you.
If it was ever an intervention, for some reason, that would be, has that school system ever been an intervention, let's say in the last 20 years? Is that okay?
I doubt very
Why
serious.
would we want to?
I doubt very serious with one of these superintendents was in the system for 20
Shelf
years.
life for a superintendent is definitely.
3 to 5.
I don't like that question, I don't think
No.
so.
I think what we have in front of us, I think is sufficient for us to be able to come up with a superintendent. These are all good questions, and I believe we have a sufficient number of questions to be asked in order to determine the next superintendent for this district.
Okay, Erica brought up a good point.
Yeah, that.
A better way to do it. Erica brought up a good point, and I'm sure they would listen to other board members on what was their current achievement, student achievement.
Okay, that sounds better.
Like
Yeah.
that one. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to have more
Thank you
positives.
so much for helping me on that.
Oh, yeah, I would love to hear positives rather
Dr.
than so
Keith,
many
you gotta
negatives.
ask that
Me
question.
too.
Yeah.
All right,
Which one is that gonna be?
It would have to be number,
14.
it would have to be number 14.
What is?
Number 14, who's gonna ask that question now?
Dr. Keith?
Okay.
Ms. Pitts, could you repeat that question?
Sure. What was the student achievement of your previous district?
Of the last district that they won.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, are we happy?
All right, what we'll do is we'll bring in each candidate in your folder that's clamped in. You have the order in which they will come in and begin to speak with you. You know the order of your questions. And remember, we can't deviate from the questions because we need to ask the same questions of every candidate that we have today. After we do that, they'll be escorted out. You'll have a few minutes if you want to score as you go. Remember, we're using the rubric that's at the top of your page, a 5 being the highest score you can get, which would be an excellent or a visionary response. All the way down to a 1, which would be a minimal response. And if they don't answer at all, of course, that would be a 0 because there are no words to score.
All right.
Then after that, you'll go into your session, you'll tally up scores, and you'll come back with the results of it. Any questions for
Kim, go back over that 5 thing.
Okay, look at the top of your sheet,
Oh,
where
I
you
see.
have questions,
The rubric is
and
given.
the rubric is at the top. A 5 is an excellent or a visionary response, all the way down to 1, which would be a minimal response.
And we give that for each
You
question.
give that for every question. You need to score every question. And if they don't answer or can't answer, then it becomes a 0, because there is nothing to score.
Mr. President.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Dawn.
We need the questions, because I wrote on 1,
Okay,
and when I finish that sheet, then my information is gone.
okay.
So do I keep all 4 of them until we complete everything?
Yes,
Or are we
we will.
turning in?
You're gonna turn the whole packet in at the very end.
Okay.
So you'll have everything with you until the very end. When you come out of your session, you'll give me all of your materials in.
And I should have a tally sheet somewhere.
Yes,
for-
and I have your tally sheet.
Okay, you have a
And
tally
one
sheet.
other thing, read the question one more time.
Which one?
all of them.
Okay, you wanna read them?
Read all, of course.
Sure, you
Not,
wanna read them?
well, number one and who, and number two and who.
Okay.
Wait.
Your first question that will be asked will be actually number 3 on your sheet,
That's mine,
and you're doing that,
yes.
okay? The second question that you'll be asking will be number 4 on your sheet, and Dr. Keith will be asking that,
That's correct.
okay? On your sheet, we marked out number 5.
Yeah.
We're keeping number 6, and Ms. Bryars will be doing that one.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, we marked out.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, we are keeping, and Mr. Dean will be doing that one.
That's correct.
Number 9, Ms. Snowden will be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10, we actually changed it some, and it's will the superintendent, how will the superintendent build relationships with the board, the community, and the staff? And Ms. Smith will be doing that one.
That's correct.
Number 11, we changed, Ms. Snowden will be asking it. It will be describe your leadership style and give examples to demonstrate that style. Number 12, we decided to scratch. Number 13 is actually gonna be Ms. Smith. It's what's the most important first steps the superintendent should usually take in a new district. And then I'm sorry.
Number 12, you see, that is correct. I was
How will
waiting.
you ensure that the policies, practices are implemented throughout the district so that they are systematic and systemic, or vice versa, systemic or systematic?
That's correct.
However you want to do.
Absolutely.
All right, and then the final question, of course, will be Dr. Keith, and she's gonna ask a question about student achievement in their previous district.
Okay.
Are we all clear?
You ready?
Good, thank you.
Okay.
All right. While you get your papers together,
We're ready?
while you get your papers together, I will get the first applicant.
Okay.
That's what I did on mine. Okay, neat. If you're gonna be neat, and you're writing all over it.
Oh, Ms. Dawkins.
So what, Mary?
I don't want to be involved in conclusion. I deliberately don't pull my mic down. Eventually,
Look at that, he even.
eventually. Of course, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, she does, and a lot of wise words to share.
You have a program in your pocket, in your purse. She was my line sister, and I can't remember who she was. I know the name. I don't know the person.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Dr. Shar. We certainly want to thank you for your interest in becoming the educational leader for Montgomery County Public Schools. And we certainly appreciate your dedication and commitment to public education.
Thank you.
And certainly you know that you're here today because we are about to begin the process of interviewing. Each of the board members have questions that they will certainly present to you, and we will just wait and listen to your response to each of those. At this time, the first question will be presented to you by Ms. Dawkins. And if you would, Ms. Dawkins.
How are you? Welcome again.
All right, Tom, you can handle
I'm
the
ready.
occasion now. I know you can.
It was on before, it
Okay.
only, it goes off before you said.
Push the button down to the bottom here.
There you go.
Ready?
Now, Tom. All right.
As the superintendent, can you hear me, sir? Of the Montgomery Public Schools, how would you create a culture of academic excellence within our district? How have you done this in previous jobs?
Yes, ma'am. You know, creating a culture where people can thrive is not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes some time. Obviously, it starts with the leader of your school district. They're the ones that set the tone. But their job is not just to set the tone. Their job is also to make sure that they surround themselves with good, competent people. And not necessarily managers, but what I call leaders, people that actually motivate and inspire. In my years, what I've found is that what helps build a culture that teachers enjoy working in is when they feel safe, when they feel like that you're supporting them, when they feel like you've got their back, that you're getting them materials they need, and that you're creating an environment that allows them to thrive as a teacher. That probably impacts the culture, you know, better than anything. So what I've done in the past is just always made sure that our people had what they needed. I made sure the environment was conducive to learning. Many of you have heard this before, that I only had one rule as a teacher and one rule as a principal and one rule as a superintendent, and that was that I will not allow you to keep others from learning. And if you have that rule, I used to say that to the kids, and I used to say that to the teachers when I was their principal, and I used to say that to the principals when I was their superintendent, that it starts with you first. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, the kids will be in an environment that they can learn. So you asked me, have I had success, you know, in doing that, especially raising achievement levels. The first superintendent's job I ever had, I remember the first day on the job, I had one of my board members, his name was Matt Shirley, came in my office and he said, Doc, he said, 3 years from now when your contract is up, he said, how will I know that you were successful? What will make me want to vote to hire you, you know, to extend your contract? And I gave him a piece of paper that outlined where we were as a district in all the academic areas, whether it be in reading levels or math levels, to discipline referrals, to where we were money-wise, the dropout rate, graduation, and so forth. And I said, Matt, come back 3 years from now, I'm going to give you a copy of this, and I'll have this paper updated. And if I have not been able to move the needle in a positive way, do not extend my contract. Because if my leadership has not been able to do that, you need another leader. And thankfully, 3 years later, he came back and he compared, and he already knew because we gave him updates, you know, all the time. And not only did he recommend that they renew my contract, he didn't ask for 3 years, he asked for 5 years. I was the only superintendent in the state of Alabama that had a 5-year contract. So that was validation that what we were doing was working.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. King?
I just want to, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
If you want to bring about change in this district, what tools or strategies would you use to do so?
Well, you know, I could be here forever to tell you the answer to that. You know, what my focus would be, and by the way, I did this 4 months ago, but I've revamped it, so I do want to give this to y'all. I put together a 30-day plan for what I would do the first 30 to 60 days if I was your superintendent. And you'll see in there that one of the first things that I would do is, I mean, we're under intervention. I've had experience in school districts that are being intervened. I was the person in charge of the Selma intervention. The first thing that I would do is I would, with a group of people in this district, develop my own intervention plan. I know the state has put one together. I've read it. I think it's too generic. I think it doesn't have enough specifics in it. I've put those plans together before, and they're very specific. As a matter of fact, when Montgomery was first put in intervention, I was asked to come to the State Department and make a presentation to Dr. Cooper and Shanthia Washington and Dee Fowler making recommendations for what would I do if I was in charge of the Montgomery intervention. I gave them a 2.5-page document of some very specific things that I would have done if I were in charge of it. So to answer that question, Dr. Keith, I'd start with figuring out first, where are we? Because, you know, you got to have accurate data to know where you are. And when I say that, I mean academically, discipline, everything. Then you put your plan together and you work off that plan. The other reason why that's important is because you're not going to be successful in your intervention if your teachers and administrators are not empowered. And they have to be a part of developing the plan. Then they'll buy into it. And then they will be the ones implementing it, and they'll do it with motivation, with energy and so forth. If they don't believe in it, they're just not going to. And then we would then create the culture that allows them to be successful in implementing that plan.
Well, welcome back. As you
Thank
said,
you,
you
Ms.
were here
Byers.
4 months ago.
Thank you.
What can a school district do about a marginal effective teacher and/or administrator? It's a two-part question. And the second part is, what will you do about a marginal effective teacher and/or administrator?
If I'm not mistaken, and I may be wrong because it was 4 months ago, I actually think I gave y'all a copy of those recommendations that I made for Montgomery schools. And if you'll look at that document, you'll see that I actually addressed that with the State Department. And I started with the principals. And I said to them, based on my knowledge of MPS, you have about half of your principals that have not been evaluated yet. You also have probationary principals that are, you're about to pass that 90-day window that you cannot pass if you plan to non-renew their contract. And if you still have about, I told them, you still have about 3 weeks to address that, to get them evaluated and to let them know if you don't plan to renew their contract. So the first thing I'm going to make sure when it comes to a principal, that if they've been evaluated appropriately, and we're not talking about 1 or 2 visits, but we're talking about getting input from the stakeholders, from the community, from the teachers, from the central office, you know, having them fill out a supervisory review form, and plus observations, we're going to have a pretty good picture as to whether we need to ask them back to renew that contract. Because we knew if we had missed that deadline, which we did, and if we didn't evaluate them, which we didn't, we not only had to ask them back, we had to give them a 3-year contract. And that hurts kids. And that's not the kids' fault. That's our fault, because we allowed that to happen. So the first thing I would do is make sure that whoever is up, we've evaluated them thoroughly, and then we make the tough decision whether to ask them back or not. In my days as superintendent in 2 different school districts, the last one being Selma, we let a lot of folks go. We let a lot of teachers go, and we let a lot of principals. We don't do it lightly, but there's one thing I was very proud of, that I never had a teacher or an administrator come in my office afterwards and question, why did you do this? They already knew, because I had already met with them on numerous occasions to give them a corrective action plan to say, here are the areas you've got to improve upon, and here's what I want you to do to work on it. They knew if we reached the point where we were going to non-renew them, they knew why we were non-renewing them. And I'm still friends with many of those same administrators and teachers today, because we did it in a way where we protected their dignity, and we did it in a way where we respected them, but we did not keep them.
Thank you.
Your turn.
There.
Durden?
Dave.
Okay,
Durden?
I got it. Student behavior is a major issue with MPS. How would you propose to shape student behavior? And will there be support to teachers for students who are constant disruptive to the learning environment?
Mr. Dean, the first way I would answer that is, it's not me that's going to be the one that shapes their behavior. The behavior obviously needs to be shaped starting at home. But the second thing is, when they get to school, we need an environment that is conducive to learning. You know, I started it off by saying that I had that one rule. I'm not going to allow you to keep others from learning. And when you have kids that, every school has them, that are keeping others from learning, you have to try to isolate that kid. You have to get them out of that environment. Now, that doesn't mean sending them home. It could mean that, but you can put them in an in-school setting. You can do an alternative setting. You can suspend them if that's what it takes to get their attention. You can refer to the courts because they're missing school due to their behavior. There's a lot of things you can do. But what I've also found in all my years is that a lot of times the competence of the teacher determines a lot of times how well the kids behave. I'll never forget, my brother was one of those non-traditional teachers, and he called me one day and he said, Larry, I need some advice. I've got some kids that want to put their head down, and I got some kids that want to pick on each other. You know, what do I do? And I said to him, and this is a guy that never went through an internship or anything, and I said to him, I said, Johnny, I said, show me your lesson plan. I said, because the best discipline plan is a great lesson plan. And when he showed me his lesson plan, I said, no wonder the kids want to misbehave. I said, you don't have them busy enough. Here's what you need to do. And so I told him how to build a good lesson plan, and his behavior started going away. Plus, they realized with him that he cared about them and the way he treated them and so forth, and those bad behaviors just went away. So a lot of times it starts with the environment that's set up, and it also starts with that teacher. And of course, if they're misbehaving, that principal's got to help them. That principal's got to make sure that that environment is conducive. And if it's not, you got to remove them from that situation because it's not fair for the rest of them.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Nolan.
My question is, what experience do you personally have with alternative schools for disruptive students? And what measures have you found that when you put, and what measures have you found that when you put it in place, work to change to the disruptive behavior for better? So it kind of
Sure.
goes with his.
When I was working in the Lee County school system for 23 years, I was in charge of alternative school for our district.
Okay.
And we did some pretty innovative things. We weren't having a lot of success with the method that was in place. And one of the things we did, and I'm not saying that's what we'll do here, but it worked for us. The kids that were placed in alternative school, they knew they had to come to school, they had to provide their own transportation, and they had to come from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night, Monday through Thursday. And then on Saturday morning from 8 in the morning to 12. They absolutely hated it because they wanted to hang out with their friends. And we didn't want them there during school time. And in addition to that, they were used to going there for a period of time, and then when their time was up, they were allowed to go back to the regular school. And what we simply did was said, you're going to serve the number of days that we put you in there, whether it's 40 days or whatever, and if you miss school, you're still going to have to make that up. But more importantly, the aides and the teachers that are in there, we had an English teacher come on Monday, a math teacher come on Tuesday, a social studies teacher and a science, and they would teach for 4 hours. So they would get their hours in of all the academics. And what we told them was at the end of those 40 days, those 4 people and the aides that are in there, they're going to fill out a form that lets us know whether they think you're ready to go back to the regular classes. And if they tell us that you've been misbehaving, you're not doing your work, you're going to be in there longer. And it worked. Not only did they do what they needed to do to get out of there, the recidivism rate was really low. They didn't usually want to come back. When I got to Phoenix City, we created something called the Success Academy. And we brought kids in there, and we actually did transport them there. And they were totally isolated from the other students. And it was a pretty regimented type thing. But we had some extremely, we had a kind of a smorgasbord of offerings when it came to academics. We accelerated them there academically. They could get on the computer. We had wonderful programs that they could go through it at a rapid pace, or at least at their pace. And we increased our graduation rates, and we reduced our dropout rates. We had a teen pregnancy program there that was an awesome program, where the girls is voluntary, whether they were in there or not. But it was just an awesome program, and that's why we called it the Success Academy, because we expected them to come out of there not ostracized, but rather successful.
Could you tell me the time on Saturday that you said they had to meet?
8 to 12.
8 to 12. And one other thing, you said if they missed a day, they had to miss it up, but what if they missed a couple hours? Did they also have to make that up to you?
We were pretty strict on them, that if they got there late or whatever, you know, we'd cut them some slack once or twice, but then if they were continuing, we would usually contact the parents and give them a hard time and just say, if you continue to be late, we're going to continue to add days to them to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tashira, for coming out to interview with us
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
My question is this: how will you, as the superintendent, build relationships with the board, the community, and the staff?
Anybody that has worked with me will tell you that's not a problem. As a matter of fact, I shared this with someone at the meet and greet today, that I was very proud when I went to Selma to take over the district there with a team of people. We weren't greeted very kindly to start with, because people were not happy that we were having to come in to try to help them. And by the time we left, I was asked by 4 out of the 5 board members if I would consider staying full-time as their superintendent. That let me know that what we had done made a difference, and that they accepted it, and they loved the success that we had. Had I had problems with the community or with the board or with the teachers or administrators, they would not have asked me to stay on full-time. But wherever I've gone, I've had the same kinds of relationships with them. I have always gotten along with board members. Sometimes, though, I give board members a hard time. If I feel like they're overstepping to the point where we're starting to have fights and stuff on the board that is unbecoming of our school district, I'm not afraid to have a private meeting with them and say, come on, guys, we gotta do better than this. But I've always maintained a good relationship with my board members, because they know that I'll always be honest with them. And I've never been afraid to get in trouble with my board, because it's not about the board, it's about the kids. And if I feel like they're doing something that hurts the kids, it's my responsibility to have courage and speak out to those board members. But I always did it privately and in a way that still showed respect. So that's never been an issue.
It's me again. All right, describe your leadership style, which I think in a lot of ways you have, and give examples of that leadership in your past districts.
I'm going to use Selma again as an example. When I went there with my team, I articulated to the board as well as to the community members when we had lots of town hall meetings that I don't know anybody, I don't owe anybody. I'm here for the kids, and that we're going to do the things we need to do to get this thing back on the right track. And I remember after about 6 months, the Selma Times-Journal did an editorial complimenting the work of my intervention team. And I sent that article to Dr. Bice, and he sent me an email back with 2 words. He said, leadership matters. Mm-hmm. And so what they needed was just somebody, I hate to say it like this, someone that is like the parent in the room, somebody that says, okay, guys, here's how we're going to do it. And I had the ability to make them believe that what we were doing was the right thing. And once they trusted that, they got on board. And the way you gain that trust is you go in with confidence, not cockiness, but confidence. You treat people with respect. You include them in the decision making. I'll never forget, I told the board the first meeting we had, I said, guys, ladies, I want you to be on board with this intervention. As you know, we don't even have to have board meetings, but I want to have board meetings because y'all are the ones that have to run this thing after we're gone. I want y'all in on the decision making. I want y'all in on it. Now, I'm not going to let you overstep, but I want you in on the discussion and the decision making. And it was a great team, but that comes from leadership where you exhibit respect for people and confidence, and more importantly, you got to be able to articulate a message.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon again. They did allow me to ask one, so here I am. How would you ensure that our policies and practices that we have established for this district are implemented throughout the district such that they become systemic and systematic?
You know, first of all, one of the things that I did, one of the last things I did when I was in Phoenix City was we completely revamped our policies and procedures manual, because after almost 10 years of being a superintendent, every year we tried to tweak those policies and procedures, because anytime we were faced with an issue where there was a little vagueness or something in the policy, that usually caused us problems. So I would get my principals and my central staff together and some teachers during the summer, and we'd go through the manual and we would tweak those policies and procedures, because we had to be able to trust in those policies and procedures. One of the things that I used to fuss with my board about a lot of times was when they were doing things that were not following our policies and procedures. And then we're supposed to have the moral high ground and implement those policies and procedures and enforce them with our teachers and our employees. So it was important that we really adhered to them. So we tweaked them all the time. Well, one of the things that you'll learn is that if you're not consistent when you enforce them, you'll get eaten alive. And so we made sure that we were consistent. And I used to tell people all the time, it's okay to be tough when you have to enforce these things, as long as you're doing it the right way and treat people right and treat them with respect. I was always complimented by AEA because I did not mistreat employees. They knew even when I had to transfer or fire or suspend or whatever, it was done in a fair way and it was done with respect. And that's what you have to do with policies and procedures. So implementing those, I mean, they're our rule book, and we've got to make sure that everybody knows them and everybody follows them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What is the most important first step as a superintendent? Let me restate this. What's the most important first step a superintendent should usually take in a new district?
Well, this may be a good time for me to give these to you, if it's okay. I'm not going to go through, Ms. Smith, this document, but there are some obvious things that the new superintendent has to do here to start with. Just like when I went and spoke to Mr. Sentence and his people about intervention, there were certain things that needed to be done right away, and then there were other things that could be done later on down the line. And you'll see from the document that I gave you, there are certain things that need to be done right away, and there's other things that we can take our time doing. One of the first things you have to do is you have to get up to speed on what's happening. And that's why I said in this document that one of the things that I would do is I would get with Dr. Moore, get caught up to date on the things that she's learned over the last 4 months. And then that's when I would start having my stakeholder meetings with central staff, with principals, with community members, with teachers, and so forth. And I'd have those same kind of meetings with my fiscal people, because I need to know what kind of financial shape we're in. I've got to know whether we need to make some immediate cuts before we start in the fall. So hopefully that document that I put together will help you kind of see the things that I would do to start with if I were fortunate enough to be your superintendent. Now, obviously, this is just a guide, This will need to be tweaked as well, because once you get here, you find out things, and there's deadlines and things that may have to be done ahead of time. But Mrs. Smith, I'll end by just saying that the first thing you want to be able to do is come in with what I call gravitas. People have to believe in you. They have to say, wow, this guy is sharp. This guy knows his stuff. I used to tell my principals all the time, you need to be the person in the room that everybody thinks knows more than they do, even if you don't. But you've got to give the impression at least that I've done my homework, I know what I'm talking about, and if you'll just believe in me, we're going to achieve some great things. That's probably the best advice I could give anybody just coming in as a superintendent.
Well, I think that concludes.
No, I have my question.
You do?
Number 14.
14, we added a 14,
Well,
right?
no, go ahead.
Dr. Shara, in your last system, where did you leave your budget? Was it in the red or green? And what was your student achievement level?
Well, every school district I've ever been a part of, we always kept our 1 month reserve. I usually averaged in Phoenix City 2 months. Sometimes we were 2.2, sometimes we were 1.8. Usually it was around 2. I want to say when I left, it was about 1.8, 1.9, almost 2 months reserve. Selma, the same thing. In Selma, we actually had more. We actually had about a 3-month reserve. And that was something I was very proud of, because we were still able to hire and buy technology and improve our facilities and still maintain a pretty good budget. Every academic program that I've ever been involved in, we always left it better than it was. We always, every year what I did a PowerPoint at our Teacher Institute every year, where I would show them on day one, when I walked in the door, here's where we were on the Stanford Achievement Test, on the Alabama Reading and Math Test that the state provided. Here's where we were on the ACT and so forth. And I showed them every year after that the progress we were making. And we actually, the title of the PowerPoint presentation was called Celebrating Success, because every number that we looked at, we increased and improved. And that was over a 9-10 year period. So I was very proud of that, and wasn't afraid to put it up there in front of everybody to see. And there were years occasionally when a number went down a point, or it stayed the same, and we owned it. We said, all right, guys, our science score didn't improve. What happened? Let's take a look at that, and let's see if we can't get that one moving in the right direction, and we usually did. So you've got to be secure enough with yourself, whoever you are, whoever the superintendent is, that they own things. They've got to. That's one of the things I said when we went to Selma is, folks, in order for us to move forward, we got to own the problems that we currently have. And then we can start healing and getting better. But let's don't be afraid to talk about it. Let's don't be afraid to admit it. We're not going to point fingers. We're just going to say, here's where we are, and here's what we need to do to fix it. So that's what I did all those years.
Mr. President, can I ask a little follow-up? It's about the budget. Can you tell me?
Well, don't forget now, that has
Whatever
to.
you
I will. I'll ask all of them. On your budget, you had either around 2 to 3 months.
Yes, sir.
What was the local millage collected to support education in Phoenix City and Selma?
I want to say that our millage was like 14%, maybe. A lot of times, what you have to understand.
In which one?
I'm sorry.
In which one, Selma or Phoenix City?
Phoenix City.
Phoenix City.
Yes, sir. It was actually less in Selma. But what you have to understand, for people that don't understand how that millage works,
Right.
it's not necessarily how many mills you have. It's the amount of the property tax, what the value of the properties are. For example, Gulf Shores, Alabama may only be collecting 6 mills, but their 6 mills that they collect is equivalent to my 20 mills in Selma,
Right.
because of the value of their property. So what you want to look at is what's the total amount that your millage is bringing in,
Right.
and not necessarily how many mills did you collect.
Right. Well, you know the minimum
The
is
minimum
10.
is 10, sure. I just used the 6 as an example.
I got you.
What was
Just-
Selma?
What was Selma? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I want to say it was like 12. It wasn't a lot.
Right.
Not only were their property values not high, they didn't collect a lot of mills, but they did get pretty good support from their city.
So you would say in both cases, they're both more than the minimum?
Oh, they were definitely both more than the minimum.
Okay, that's what I'm.
Okay.
I'll never forget, if I can throw this in here, I remember I got my hand slapped, about the second day I was on the job in Phoenix City because, I was asked to share my vision for Phoenix City with our Chamber of Commerce. And I stood up there and I said, folks, if you ever want to have a world-class city, you gotta first have a first-class school system.
Exactly.
And they all nodded in agreement, and I said, well, let me tell you about that. I said, how many mills and how much money do you think that Auburn is giving their school district? And how about Opelika? They were familiar with both of those towns nearby, and they were also similar in size. Auburn City, the city of Auburn was giving their school district $9 million a year to spend at their discretion, any way they wanted. Opelika was given $4 million a year. So I asked the audience, I said, how many do you think Phoenix City's given? 0. Well, they didn't like that. They called my board chairman and said, you need to talk to your superintendent. You know, he embarrassed us. And I'm like, but that's just being honest. If you want your city, school district to do better, you gotta help fund it. You gotta help
Money
fund
where
it.
your mouth is.
So,
Yeah, all right.
and my board chairman, who I love dearly, said to me, many of you may know Eddie Lowe, he's now the mayor of Phoenix City. He said to me, Doc, I know you told the truth, but let us take those arrows and bullets. And I said, well, Eddie, you guys have been doing it for years and it's still 0. I said, maybe you need a superintendent that'll shake it up a little bit. And I said, and I don't mind doing it because it's the truth.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the last question that we have for you. We certainly appreciate your coming out and taking an interest in the leadership in this district. And we will be getting back. We'll have, after we go through our, growth, we'll then make a selection at the end of the year. Again, we want to thank you for your time and efforts of coming out and sharing, taking the interview with us.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back. It's always enjoyable.
Yeah.
Let me just end with something, if you don't mind, though. It's important, there's 3 things that y'all need to make sure. If you want to really see this school district heading in the right direction, those 3 priority areas that you need to focus on. 1, your teachers and your kids got to feel safe. 2nd, if you care about kids, do not lose your accreditation.
Oh, no, we
Do not lose it.
no, we
You got to do whatever it takes to keep it.
Amen, I agree.
And the 3rd thing is you got to get off of intervention at some point.
Amen.
And so all your actions need to head in those 3 directions. And I can tell you now, there's no reason y'all should be under intervention 5 years from now.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about, it shouldn't take you more than 2 years to get off. It took less than 2 years in Midfield. It took less than 2 years in Selma. It took 4 years in Birmingham because they fought it every step of the way. So take care of those 3 things, you're going to be fine.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Oh, you did? Where's mine? You know where mine is?
Make sure you know which ones were, so that we captured your questions, and so if you do need to let us know. So recalculate them. I know, I read down them, so keep the one you did, keep it sharp, just like you had.
That's
Just so
just
you have
that
all
one.
those questions again.
I see.
Okay, but the last question,
I see.
number 10, I didn't do good. The last one,
10.
you got her viewed from the other paper, I didn't do a good job.
Was that mine?
I'm placing them down.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, that's fine.
So keep it, don't change the share, keep that one just as it is, I would make you write that stuff over there.
Oh, well, I just was so much copies down and I don't know. Thank you guys.
This might make it easier for you.
Thank you.
Did you read that? Oh, you're a wonderful person.
You updated it? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Here. Thank you
Human
much.
resources, you got to be
That's
resourceful.
right.
And human.
Right, that's the main thing.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
We might have to get her some crackers or something. don't we?
He walks on water,
Yeah.
and I know that. That's what I'm thinking. That's why I said what I said. He walks on freaking water.
Let me just run through this again so we all know the numbers have been changed, but they are like this. Okay, Eleanor, you have number 1, Lisa number 2, Mary number 3, number 4, Durden, 5, Melissa, 6, Erica, 7, Melissa, 8, myself, 9, Erica, 10, again, Lisa. Y'all have that?
Okey-doke. Okay.
1, Eleanor,
Yes,
2,
sir.
Lisa, 3, Mary, 4, Durden, 5, Melissa, 6, Erica, 7, Melissa, 8, myself, 9, Erica, 10, Lisa. Y'all got it?
Got it.
Okay.
Please read over them. I tried to capture what you said, but I don't want to mess it up, so make sure it's what you want to say.
All right. All right.
Lisa. Is Erica?
Yeah.
Okay, 8. Yeah, I know, but I want I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, we're, your book tells you what kind
Who we got?
yeah, it's on there, I'm fine. You must be full.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, we're so happy that you took an interest in coming out and certainly showing an interest in leading the district here. We appreciate your dedication and commitment to public education. And as you know, we are here today for an interview, and we have already established individuals on the board who will be asking you different questions. And then we'll just wait for your response. And if you have any comments you'd like to make in the end, please feel free to do so. Okay? The first question, we'll start with Ms. Dawkins, and she'll ask you the first question. We'll continue to move until all questions are asked.
Good afternoon again,
Good afternoon.
and thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
As superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools, how could you create a culture of academic excellence within our district? And how have you done this in previous jobs?
Okay, first of all, I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude. I'm very humbled to have been selected among the 4 finalists. I'm very passionate about education, and I look forward to sharing with you just a few of my work, a few information about my work since I've been in the field of education. First of all, before you can improve student achievement, you must have effective leadership. And my background and experience working with principals and developing leadership programs, coaching principals have equipped me to provide effective leadership, training plans for principals to shore up their leadership ability. So starting first with the leaders and training the leaders, job-embedded professional development. In the past, recently as a superintendent, I met monthly with my principals. We also had annual retreats. During that time, we would have an opportunity to really reflect on best practices. Information was provided specifically to address the continuous improvement plan that we had at the district level, any of the district priorities. So I would intensely work with the principals, with my central office staff, to ensure that they have professional development and coaching that they need to be effective principals. It's principals who create the culture and climate at each school. Therefore, they should be knowledgeable of what it takes to create a very positive culture and climate at their various schools. And this is one of the main topics that we focused on while I was at my previous school district. Culture and climate training is imperative. They should also know what effective instruction looks like. So all components of being a strong instructional leader was provided through professional development and learning and coaching. In terms of the teachers at each school, we systematically provided training for all teachers in the district using the strategic teaching model. We had input from principals, from teachers, and we worked with the state department to do the initial train the trainer training. So we had a cadre of trainers, instructional coaches who received the training, and then they were responsible for turning around the training, because it's important that each school and each teacher utilizes effective evidence-based practices in their instruction. Another step is to ensure that there are pacing guides that are consistent. When I went to my previous district, they did not have pacing guides. The instructional program was very, very fragmented, and there was a lack of growth across the district. So I believe in systematically providing that training for teachers. We did strategic teaching, Webb's depth of knowledge. We also focused on rigor to make sure that teachers were providing rigorous instruction. It's also important that assignments and activities are aligned with the standards, because if assignments and activities are not aligned with the standards, students won't perform well. And this was taking place in the district as well. We also implemented a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation system for all levels of employees, specifically principals and teachers, as well as support staff. So we would quarterly go to each school, and we would have progress monitoring meetings with the leadership team. We would examine data points like attendance rates, pre and post test that we administered in the district each quarter to assess where students are and where they were at the end of the school year. We would also examine data such as observation data from principals. They would have to show us observation records where they have gone in at least 25% of their staff each week, so that they would be in touch with what was going on in each classroom. In order for principals to be instructional leaders, they have to spend time in the classroom, so not only will they be knowledgeable so that they can make sure that the resources and materials are there for the teachers, they can intervene when teachers have difficulty. And so we would look at data points to make sure that if teachers are having difficulty performing, that complete coaching cycles took place with those teachers. And there would be documentation of each expectation at these quarterly monitoring meetings. And that ensured that what we talked about in our monthly principals meetings, they were actually taking place at the school level. And also, I spoke of the issue with rigor and watered down instruction because some of our students were not doing well. The pre and post data results and looking at those results were an eye-opener for teachers. At the very least, if you know exactly what standards are required each grading period, at the end of the grading period, and you assess children and you see the weakness, and they were required to remediate the weaknesses or provide intervention aligned with those weaknesses, you should see growth. So as teachers begin to look at that data and be data-driven, and then implementation of the response to instruction intervention plan for students, they were able to see, well, did I provide those interventions, how those interventions impacted student achievement by the end of the grading period for that period of time, for that 9-week period of school. So combined with these activities and the evaluations that we did on our teachers and our administrators, it created a culture of accountability. It created a culture of student-centered focus and also data-driven focus, that we were looking at students' data and then we had to take that data and do something about it.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was writing notes. If you want to bring about change, first of all, I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited, and I was excited to meet you at the meet and greet today. If you want to bring about change in this district, what tools or strategies would you use to do so?
I have had a lot of experience dealing with change because a lot of my career has been spent in school improvement, continuous improvement, and turning around schools. It is our obligation to embrace change, but we know as humans, we don't like change. As they say, only babies, that adage, babies like change. But first of all, something that we did as a team, and I led in my previous superintendency, is educating people about the change process. And that when you go through change, you experience a physiological change. You get anxious sometimes, even your blood pressure can go up. But when people are aware that change is hard, it's difficult, but it is required for growth, they're more likely to embrace change. So I provided this training for central office staff and for principals, and the principals turned around the training at the school level, and that was the context for change. We also implemented the book study, Failure is Not an Option, to try to shift those mindsets away from old habits to a focus on students, student learning, student achievement, and from the old myopic thinking, that's me, what's good for me, what's convenient for me, to the weopic, and our focus as we is on our students. So that's a shift in the mindset of the staff. So I think that education is very important. I think it's important that a vision, mission, and goals not just be on paper, but that be living. And it is the superintendent's charge to lead that vision. And our vision was to be a high-performing district. And we wanted to have evidence of that fact, because documentation of that fact of being high-performing was a part of our vision. So we couldn't be about lip service. We were inspecting our data on a regular basis to see if we're living up to the vision of the district and our core values about being student-centered, focused on achievement, and the well-being of students. So putting that vision out there, having that accountability system, embracing, and this is so important for change. People are more likely to change if they have input, ownership in that change. So we went about making sure that we gave ownership to all of our important stakeholders. We gave ownership to our teachers. I even spoke to, on several occasions, support staff custodians. And I talked to them about the importance of their role, because the culture and climate is immediately evaluated based upon the way schools look. So they play a role. I even surveyed students and asked them, what's important? What do you like about your school and what you don't like about your school? And some students actually said they don't like the fact that their schools are not clean. And they talked specifically about the bathroom, in some cases odor. So connecting with all support staff, connecting with all those stakeholders, and involving them on committees, getting input through community meetings, district-wide meetings, including them on committees. We did surveys pre and post to ensure growth based on the perception of parents of our school system. I did a community challenge that we sent out many forms of media, from radio, television, newspaper, letters to stakeholders, business people. They all came out, showed out, probably 200-300 people. And I just shared the vision for the district and the fact that we need strong stakeholders to make a difference in the school system. The reason I believe that districts fail is for the lack of collaboration and ownership for student learning outcomes by the mass public, and that's the entire community. So it was just it was a challenge to get involved. I had forums where they can volunteer, adopt a school, participate, because the school system is the rock bed of every community. It's the future of our city. And I'm heavily invested in Montgomery County. I have children that graduated, 3 sons from Montgomery County. I have a granddaughter who attends Forest Avenue in 1st grade and one who will be attending kindergarten. I've got nieces, nephews, so it is incumbent, you know, that we get stakeholder involvement in getting it right for the children. And I just want to say very briefly and not take up too much time, but my purpose for being here is because I have a deep passion for children. I always have. It's a part of my core values and spiritual beliefs. And I believe it's incumbent upon me to try to make a difference when I've been granted the privilege of quality education, wonderful educational experiences, and skills to make a difference. So that's why I'm here today, and I think that there are numerous teachers, principals, educators, great people in the district. They are in need of just a rejuvenation and boosting their morale and a refocus on the power that they have as educators in impacting student learning. And I believe that's also true with the community. I mean, I am a realist, but I believe every individual has in them compassion to do service for children. And they just need to know how to do that service. And they need to be reminded of the fact that it is their obligation as citizens to make a difference in our children and so into the future of their community. And that's just a few of the things that I've done in the past to engender that participation and ownership for the well-being of our students. Thank you.
Mary?
Listening to what you have said already, I think you pretty much answered this because of the array of things that you've done, Dr. Manga, and I applaud you for that. But I will still ask my question. What can a school district do about a marginally effective teacher and or administrator? The second part, what will you do about a marginally effective teacher and or administrator?
First of all, I'd like to start by saying that I'm a teacher at heart, and I spent a lot of years providing professional learning for adults. And I do believe in adult learning, just learning generally. And before you can get to the point where you make recommendations for non-renewal or termination, you must provide adequate professional learning, side-by-side coaching, and multiple opportunities to improve. And that's for teachers as well as leaders. It is incumbent upon an instructional leader and they should have the knowledge and ability to go into classrooms and provide a full cycle of coaching for teachers. They should be knowledgeable enough to provide feedback in lesson plans, in the quality of instruction, the types of assignments that are being given in class, assessments that are being used. So with this in mind, if you provide that tiered intervention, professional learning support system, then you may get to the point where you have to make recommendations for termination. But I strongly believe in the power of high quality professional learning for educators. And I do believe that the majority of educators have at heart the best interest of students. They may not have the skills and ability, but provided multiple opportunities that addresses their deficiencies, they will make effort to improve. And for those who don't, then there's always the 3 R's. They can recommit, retire, or relocate.
Thank you. very much.
Okay, well, Drew?
All right, Dr. Mangum, student behavior is a major issue within MPS. How would you propose to shape student behavior? And also, will there be support to teachers for students who are constant disruption to the learning environment?
First of all, as a teacher and one who has prepared hundreds of teachers over the years, I know that you can't provide quality instruction without order and discipline. You've got to have that orderly environment at the school and in each classroom for students to excel academically. And I also know that in instances where you have high infraction, disciplinary infractions, misbehavior, you need, first of all, preventative measures, and that is a high-quality character ed program, an advisory program. And what I have implemented in the past, in my past district, is a process that's called comprehensive learning supports. It is not a program, it is a process, and it is focused on removing barriers to learning. And one of those main barriers is behavioral issues. So you provide character education that consists of what does character look like, how do you treat yourself and others, respect, self-regulation, how do I regulate my own behavior, self-discipline, how do I treat others to prevent bullying, what is the acceptable use of language in a school environment. But the good character and self-regulation habits that are necessary for high achievement will be a part of every school's discipline plan. We will use those learning supports. Now, you have situations where children actually have mental health issues. Your comprehensive learning support plan at the school level takes the district supports as well as the community supports. They're spelled out, and teachers and administrators have scores of resources that they can use to address specific learning needs of students. Generally, I just want to make a commentary on today's education. We take children who have not been taught good character. It hasn't been modeled for them. They have issues with anger management. They don't have conflict resolution skills. And we put them in a classroom, and we don't focus on what it takes to be a successful learner. And we expect them to learn. And in today's society, with so many distractions, as violent as it is, and cycles of violence in homes, we have to take on that responsibility. We are doing students a grave disservice. We don't address that very important outcome. I partnered with Dallas County Economic Development Authority and went to HR meetings for directors, HR directors in the area. And one of their main concerns is students don't have soft skills. They don't know the importance of just treating people with respect, even their supervisor, showing up on time, treating their colleagues with respect, how to speak to people with respect, how to shake hands and say, it's a pleasure to meet you. And those skills need to be a part of our curriculum. And in my last position, as I said before, we embarked upon a strong advisory and character ed program with a comprehensive learning support plan for every school to address discipline issues. Discipline should be progressive, and it should be based upon the offense. I consider myself to be a very strong disciplinarian, and if you talk to some students, you know, they will validate that point. But with that, I and all of us have been able to reach a level of success because of the parents, the grandparents, the models that we have had that have given us enough soft skills to excel in our profession. But what about those children that don't have those models, that don't have those skills, those soft skills that it takes to be successful. I wanted to make that point. So the support for teachers, we need alternative learning environments, because sometimes just the traditional learning environment is not the best place for children. They need more intensive support in behavioral management from professionals, be it licensed practicing counselors, behavioral interventionists, psychologists, but it needs to be a well-devised environment that addresses and remediates those issues so those children can return to the traditional environment as quickly as possible. In supporting teachers, teachers need strategies, classroom management strategies. We implemented Children's at Heart program in our secondary schools. That's a program that helps teachers in classrooms have a very positive culture and climate, so that teachers can work with students face to face and understand them and get to know them, so they'll know what sort of sets them off and won't push them into a corner so they behave erratically. So supporting the teachers with strategies that they can use in the classroom.
Thank you.
So,
Melissa?
It's, hi, Dr. Mangum, I'm Melissa Snowden. It is a pleasure to meet you, and my question really, I think you've answered it, and I'll be like Ms. Briers and say I'm just gonna ask you it just so we make sure we give you all of the opportunity. What experience do you personally have with alternative schools for disruptive students? And what measures have you found that when put in place work to change the disruptive behavior for better?
The experience I've had working with alternative schools. I'll talk about my most recent experience. The partnership that I had a very, very positive partnership with Judge Bob Armstrong, who deals with delinquents in Dallas County, or youthful offenders is a better term to use. And we partnered while I was there. There was a program that's called Hope Academy, which is a prevention program for youth that have shown indications of criminal behavior, inappropriate behavior, and students in alternative schools have had access or had access to the counselors. They have parole officers. They have a myriad of staff at Hope Academy that provided conflict resolution training for students, how to, just how to deal with others. They also provide mentoring for those students. So all of the external resources that students need to adapt their behavior so that they would be able to re-enter traditional classroom environment was provided through the services with Hope Academy. And also having the right staff, having someone that is understanding, and usually we see these issues with behavior be more intense at the secondary level. You have to have experience dealing with that age group, be very firm but yet caring, and we were able to experience a considerable success with those children leaving and not returning there because of the services that were provided while they were in alternative school. And they also did extracurricular things, activities with the kids.
Thank you.
I'm number 6.
Mhm.
Okay. Welcome. And I'm Erica Smith, and I too met you at the gathering. My question to you is, how would a superintendent build relationships with the board, the community, as well as the staff?
This is one of the most critical pieces of being an effective superintendent and leader, building relationships. And the ability of a leader to build relationships is determined on the success of the district, school, student achievement, all variables. And I've been successful in building relationships, first with the board by, with my original board. Within the first month, we had a retreat. And that retreat was very instrumental on me understanding the expectations of the board, for us to understand, you know, we did a personality sort of profile, and we had discussions about the personality profiles, and we learned about the natural way of being of each individual. So they understood, you know, they know that I'm very task-oriented, so when you speak to a task-oriented person, for example, that you talk to them, well, I just need 5 minutes of your time, and these are the major points. And they have filled in all the gaps because they just know, they're just really with it, with issues around education specifically. So we got to know each other, the personalities, the ways of being, communication, spent time together, you know, really fleshed out a plan for the district, strategies, and that was instrumental in starting off on the right foot. We were in daily communication through text, emails, meetings, including them, board members, on different initiatives. Like we started a early college program, and they would have select board members at that particular committee meeting. So including board members on each aspect of the continuous improvement plans and priorities for the district is integral. Another opportunity we had, we took several board members, we rode down and did a site visit in Mississippi at one of high-performing schools that had converted to personalized learning. That was a wonderful time to bond. So creating those opportunities to bond with the board, regular communication, there were always board updates that I provided via email, lots of texting, as I said before, phone conversations, you know, even lunch meetings from time to time. You know, informing the board about the different school events was really important, and I saw them at those school events on a regular basis. So that's pivotal, because I understand the role of the board, and I can't be successful unless I'm working with you and carrying out the vision you have for the district. So that's critical. In terms of relationships with faculty and staff, you know, each year I had a day where we kicked off the school year and brought everybody in the district together, and we just talked about our goals, the strategic plan, our mission, our vision, encouragement, recognition. I would always start with student performance or putting students up in front to remind everyone this is the purpose of our work. And also that motivation and encouragement is really critical, and also knowing them, when I say faculty, staff, principals, by regular site visits. You know, I know that the district is larger, but it was a priority for me to be present in schools. So not, you know, just to say hello, pat on the back, and be present, because people need to see that you care and that you're in tune with their needs. And even to pick up, like for example, I was in one of the schools, and this just bubbled up, and I was in a classroom, and the carpet was absolutely unbearable for small children. It was just filthy. And one of the teachers mentioned it to me, and I know the budget is tight, but it was enough money. We had enough money to replace that carpet. So things like that. You can't always fulfill every request that you hear when you're out, but you can show your faculty and staff and support staff that you care. You know, you can be there and show that you care and that you listen to their voice, and, you know, you get ideas from them. So that's important. Now, the parent piece. Each year when I was in the district, we had a back-to-school bash. And what a back-to-school bash is, it was just a fun day for the entire community. And it was held in the gym. And we would have a motivational speech. I even did a little rap one year, my first year. It was just impromptu. I don't know where that came from. But I was just inspired just to encourage everyone and just sort of get it, you know, ease sort of the tension that was there with the new superintendent. And what is the new superintendent going to expect? I'm a person just like you. So there were fun activities for the kids. There was food. Every school was represented. We gave away book bags, school supplies, uniforms, the different nonprofits came out, there was dental screening, just different things going on, services from the community. And we had numerous events like that where we reached out to the community. I've attended churches, regular chamber meetings, Rotary meetings. I was regularly attended Dallas County Children's Policy Council meetings. Just being out there, connecting with people is really key. And I'm gonna make this last point because I can go on and on and on because those relationships with the community is critical. I had a faith-based breakfast twice, one each year, where I invited all the faith-based organizations to breakfast, and we shared our vision, our continuous improvement plan, and we asked them to adopt a school, and we just compelled them to get involved. And more than anything, we let them know that the doors of the school are open to you and your involvement, to volunteer, to support as needed.
I have a clarification. I love your energy on that one. I think that was good, but you said something about, you did the personality profile, but after that you said something about daily text, group text and stuff like that?
Yes.
Were all the board members included in that
Yes.
text?
Yes.
And if you didn't, if they weren't, did you do anything about that?
Let me clarify. What information one board member got, they all received. And that was consistent on my part.
Thank you.
That is critical.
Impressive.
That is critical. So we all know the same thing, most definitely. I'm glad you asked that. And let me also say about that profile, that it was personal genetics done through Alabama School Board Association. That's what we did. Let me clarify that. Thank you.
I have
Thank
the
you.
next question. Describe your leadership style and give examples that demonstrate you using that style in a previous district.
My leadership style. I am a collaborative leader because, as I said before, you can't achieve progress without true collaboration from all of your stakeholders. I provided collaborative leadership in my former district. I involved, for example, there was a multiple-year strategic plan, but we had to develop an annual continuous improvement plan for the district. In developing that plan, we included parent involvement, parent input, we improved principal input, teacher input. We had representatives on that committee so that we could hear the concerns and input and priorities of those various stakeholders. In addition to that, we came up with our comprehensive monitoring system that was created, was a collaborative decision between central office staff and principals. They bought into it. And also, when we decided to do strategic teaching district-wide as the priority, that bubbled up from the school level. So I believe for people to take ownership of the work, they gotta have input in the work. They have to be makers and be a part of the process, and then they take ownership.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. They did allow me to ask one.
Okay.
I don't ask one question.
Maybe they left that for the chair, you know?
I don't know. No. How would you ensure policies and practices are implemented throughout the district such that they are systemic and systematic?
Policies and procedures.
How would you ensure that our policies, board policies, and practices are implemented throughout the district such that they are systemic and systematic?
I mentioned to you that we had monthly principals meetings. During this time, you know, we have mandates, policies, procedures, laws, guidelines that we must follow, compliance monitoring. During those monthly meetings, all the expectations, we went over all the expectations during those meetings to make sure that the principals understood exactly what they were expected to implement at the school level. We also had a process where we had a small central office staff, and I must say, I wanted to make this point about being in a smaller district. The good thing about it is, the experience years are like dog years, because you have your hands on everything. Everything, I mean, I had my hands on so many things that you wouldn't necessarily have time to do in a large district. It was just required because we had a small staff. Now, back to my point, we had a small central office staff, but we had our central office staff assigned specifically to schools. And they would spend on most weeks a minimum of 2 days in each school. So the expectations that we have gone over in the principals' meetings, they were there to ensure that they were taking place. And they were there not only to ensure, but to support is the important piece. Because like I said, I do believe that people, if they know how, they will do. So if principals needed assistance in the implementation of anything, they didn't quite understand the gist of that policy, they would have that liaison, we call them district liaisons, but they were really coaches and supporters for the principals. They would have that link. If they needed resources, if they needed additional training, then that district liaison would come back, and I would meet with the district staff monthly, and we would look at those individual needs and plan how to address them. So we always stayed in the loop. The policies and procedures, we push them out. For example, if there's new policies that we've developed, we push them out to the principals immediately. Before they get pushed out, we go over those policies at the principals' meetings. And as I said, that monitoring piece, it needs to be consistent. And we agree on the look-fors. We have discussions with our district liaisons, and then they have look-fors when they go out into the schools. If they want to look for a certain priority, strategy, policy implementation, then they look for it, and they talk to the principals about it, and they provide feedback and support. And then that's the only way to get that systematic growth across the district. It worked with 11 schools, it can work with 53 schools. And then that all bubbled back, and we had meetings around the data.
Thank you. Erica?
Sorry, I was writing it down.
You were writing it down.
Yes. What's the most important first step a superintendent should usually take in a new district? The first step.
The first step is relationships. It all boils down to relationship. You've got to have, first of all, foremost, relationship with board members, very critical. And relationships with, during that time, I'm just reaching back at my experience. I really brought the principals in as soon as possible and spend multiple days with them during the retreat so that we can understand what our vision and what our priorities were for the district. So relationships with your board, your principals, and then making those relationships with parents, students, teachers, all of that is critical. But if I had to put them in order, I put board members first, principals second, and then start, because you've got to have, I call that home. Charity starts at home. And if we are together on the same sheet of music with the same vision, then we can spread abroad to the parents and the community members, because we all need to speak with the same voice and have the same priority.
Lisa?
In your last system, where did you leave your budget? Was it in the red or the green? And what was your student achievement of the last district you served as superintendent?
The budget was definitely in the green. We always had over 1 month in reserve, and you know how that fluctuates. At some points, it's over 2 point, and then some points it's like 1.3. I don't think it ever got more than that. So we went through a bonding process. We have A1 credit, so that was, a stick it, just a feather in the hat for the. I would say that was a team effort. That was a team effort. And in terms of achievement, student achievement, we experienced growth in achievement both years. Our focus year one, it's always on student achievement, but it's a research fact that you don't improve student achievement without improving the culture and climate. So that was our priority, culture and climate. And you can't get to student achievement in any other way. So that was our big focus. We had goals and objectives for culture and climate on every continuous improvement plan, our district plan. We had specific strategies at the district level as well as the school level. Student achievement, we had, first year, we had one elementary school that was on the failing list and a middle school that was on the failing school list. And I really dislike that term. The failing school, the elementary, was removed the second year. So we had considerable improvement that year. The middle school, you know, is a little more difficult, but there were culture and climate improvements and small gains in achievement. And at the high school, the second year, it was the first year for 10th graders to be the accountability year. And that school went on the failing list, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that math teachers, weren't able to locate certified math teachers after a very aggressive recruiting effort and also providing signing bonuses, relocation bonuses, and recruiting in 3 different states.
Okay, I think that's, wait a minute. Don't you have a follow-up thing?
Yeah, my follow-up was, with the last candidate was, would you please refresh my memory? I know you were in Selma for the intervention. Before that, what district were you superintendent?
I was working at the State Department of Education.
Okay.
Would you like me to recount my experiences?
No. I was just asking, so it wouldn't be applicable, because Dr. DeShera, my question was, what was the local millage support for the school system where you were superintendent?
10.
So, and he answered what Selma was.
12.
So, okay, thank you.
Oh, you said 12. You said 12. But, okay. Well, we appreciate your coming out and taking your time, certainly your dedication and commitment to public education. And we'll have a couple more candidates, and certainly we'll have some information. What?
And Dr. Mangum,
Oh,
a couple of the board members were at the meet and greet, but the president and I went to a funeral at the same time as the meet and greet. But I've read much about you, know about you, so I feel like I know you.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to say before the board before you leave?
Yes, I would just like to make a closing remark.
Okay.
First of all, I hope in the information that I've shared, it has become very clear that I'm a student-centered leader, and that I'm very passionate about student learning and their well-being and preparing them for success in this society. I believe that my greatest strength is my knowledge of how to improve leadership in schools, teaching and learning. I believe that's my greatest strength. I am a collaborative leader. I've talked about that as well. And also, I understand what it takes to create a governance structure that is conducive for effective delivery of services across the district, because I think in terms of a system. You know, I would often say, when I was in my last position, we want all of our schools to rise together. So we had that consistency in core practices that were non-negotiable. And finally, I just wanted to make this point because, you know, it is relative to the applicants. In my experience, I've visited a lot of classrooms and dealt with a lot of teachers. And I've seen where first-year teachers have outperformed 30-year teachers. It is the passion, it's the knowledge field, the innovation, and the willingness to go over and above. So with that being said, years of experience does not denote effectiveness. And with that being said, I would like to thank each one of you each one of you for this opportunity and just taking time to, listen to my passion about student learning and know that I'm very invested in this community. I love this community, and I would do everything within my power to ensure that children receive a high-quality education, because Montgomery is the capital city, and I believe that Montgomery Public School System could be that star on the map that represents the capital of Alabama.
Thank you.
Thank you. Break. Let's get a break. We took about 10-minute break. Yeah. Because I knew during about that time. I knew it was about that time. Good afternoon, once again. We're about to reconvene and continue the process of interviewing at this time, and we're waiting at this time on the next candidate to come forward. We're ready for the next candidate.
What, who was that? Who was that?
Well, you
She's on her way, Mr. Wood.
were you responsible for this, Renee?
Yes, Miss Pitts.
Kids did a good thing.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna start seeing her every.
Kids did a great thing.
She keeps us fed.
No, we need a break.
Oh, is that your granddaughter? Oh, look at those cute little arms. I just love all those rolls. What is her name? Oh my
Mom, you
goodness.
grab his thing.
Yes, sir, we're good.
I would just have to stay there all the time. Look at those little baby toes.
Huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
I just love the little dimples in the hands. Oh, she is a doll.
Oh, this back
I love all her hair. My girls had hair like that too. Oh, yeah. On the 18th, on her 18th birthday.
She is, she's so helpful. She thinks she is really something, man.
I will. She is so cute. She is very impressive.
Miss Kim Pitt, take that if you don't mind. Miss Kim Pitt, I want to appreciate you for being so considerate and so, just got everything out here for leadership, cookies,
That's where I'm like, oh my gosh, I would
I
not.
know where it is. You know,
I
I'm
would
way
have
up
stayed
there.
there. I would take
Hey, look,
Take her.
I come here early one of these days.
Well, one night, then I'd be like, you can have her, but I wouldn't take her in the day.
I may be coming. I know that.
That's a good idea.
Who's our next night? Robert Griffin. Is he here? Griffin, yeah.
And then they'll love you and think you're great because it was, that's a really good idea.
One of the doctors that had been there for the.
Yeah. That's smart. I will remember that.
It's coming. Yeah, you should. And then my bags, okay, but we did my head, 2 bags, and the first one that came from the drawer with the dirty drawers. I said, they could have kept those. But still, that was, had something happened, but sometimes they just wake up. It's like, just get annoyed again. That's where I am, just here.
Where did she teach?
Recently.
You fell as you were running, right? You were jogging.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Griffin. We certainly appreciate your applying for the position of superintendent for Montgomery Public Schools, and certainly we appreciate your commitment and dedication to public education. Certainly, you know, at this time, we are about to begin the interview process. Each individual part of the board will be asking questions of you, and then we'll be waiting on your response. In the end, if you would like to give us a briefing of any words you would like to leave with us, and at the end of the questioning, you may feel free to do so. So at this time, we'll start with our questioning with Ms. Dawkins, number 1.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
doing well.
Good. Number 1 question for you, Dr. Griffin. As the superintendent of the Montgomery Public Schools, how could you create a culture of academic excellence in this district? And how have you done that in previous districts?
I will start with the second part of the question first, here's what I've done. When I became superintendent in Demopolis, the percentage of proficiency in your academics in reading, math, they were average to slightly above average. So what we did is we implemented, make sure we use quality instructional strategies, individualized instruction, multimodality techniques. We used bell ringers, closers for the school day. And we had, we made sure that the lesson plans were current, and we had pacing guides were utilized. And over the course of time in Demopolis, like for 8th grade, reading and math, and the 8th grade is all grades are critical, make no mistake about it. But in the 8th grade, that's an excellent grade to take a look at. The 8th grade is, research indicates that is a time that you can really examine, it's a predictor of post-academic success, you might say. But in 8th grade math, we reached the 4th highest scores in the state, and in 8th grade reading, the 8th highest scores in the state. And I was very proud of that, Demopolis, because we had a free and reduced rate between 60 to 70%. We were keeping very good company. And as far as Montgomery, and all school systems are different. There's no two are identical. I definitely want to implement those types of strategies as well. And I understand, we're struggling in some areas, and that's fine. Those things happen. I'd like to implement some research-based educational program that sort of addresses and sort of renews the climate and the culture of the school. I'd like to work with this school board, and I understand that the board collectively voted to allow the school system to be the intervention process. And work with the intervention team, and everybody pulling from the same end of the rope, and let's work together and find research-based education programs that address school climate and school culture, and there are just numerous examples across the country where there's been success in struggling school systems, and the school systems together across the country who are participating in these programs, they serve as a network together. And what happens is attendance improves, discipline drops, achievement improves, and you can also implement, programs to utilize working with parents as well. And so the academic approach that I used in Demopolis, I know the formatives and the data analysis and data-driven instruction, and making sure that the teachers and the administrators have the PD they need to implement such a process. I know that will work, because when I got there, the scores were average to slightly above average, and we had double-digit percentage-wise gains in 3 through 8 through 11 across the board. But I understand, some schools doing very well, some schools that are struggling. And with those struggling schools, let's look together and find an educational program that fits the Montgomery Public Schools, all working together, and find the one that best fits us and implement it, in addition to the instructional strategies. And so you're sort of hitting the struggling schools. You're giving them a dual treatment where you can implement the instructional strategies across the board, because some schools need a little extra help, and that's understandable.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Lisa? I'm sorry, Lisa.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Griffin, and I say that, when I met you today at the meet and greet, I apologize for thinking that you were Mr. DeShera. Again, I had only met him one time and thought you were him, so I apologize.
That's fine.
So my question, and thank you for coming, and it's a pleasure knowing you. If you want to bring about change in this district, what tools or strategies would you use to do so?
When implementing change, first, do no harm. Follow due process. Adhere to the law. Follow the policy. And every decision is based on what's in the best interest of teaching and learning. Change is always painful. There's going to be resistance. You make sure before you make changes that and I told you about following the law, but you be sure that you listen to all the stakeholders, and because there's going to be some pushback, and an open line of communication with your board, and transparency. And then I visit again, follow the law, follow the policy, do what's in the best interest of teaching and learning, and things typically work out. And my microphone just got significantly louder. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. Just making sure. I didn't think I raised my voice there. I wasn't screaming at you, Dr. Keith.
You're all right. You're doing all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing all right.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Griffin, for being
Yes.
here.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
What can a school district do about a marginally affected teacher and/or administrator? Second part of that, what will you do about a marginal affected teacher and/or administrator?
First of all, regular evaluations, especially on the contract administrators end, they have to be evaluated annually, or it adds a year to their contract per state law. But I'll tell you how I looked at it as a superintendent and as a principal. I felt as if one of my employees was failing. Sometimes I go look in the mirror and say, what did I do wrong? Did I fail? If they're failing, I'm failing, right? So the thing to give them the professional development that they need. If they're struggling in an area, have them to go visit an expert in the area. We're all a novice in some area, okay? Nobody is a master of all, an expert in all areas. Allow them to go and visit and shadow someone who is an expert in these areas and watch what comes back, and you'll be surprised. But make sure you have a professional development plan on everyone, and identify the objectives and the goals that they're struggling at. Make sure that the goals are what I call SMART goals. Specific, attainable, timed, and and measurable and attainable in time. And throughout the year, the professional development plan year, you make sure that you have, every 3 months, you're having checks and you're meeting to go over to see how the progression is coming. And so that would be the way to evaluate both non-effective, teachers and administrators. Well, if the problem continues, then eventually, action has to be taken, because eventually what we're doing here, and I'm convinced this group, that you're here for the children, and it's in the best interest of teaching and learning. I am convinced of that about each of you. And of course, as asked me, I know you asked, what should a school system do? I hope, and of course, be sure you have a policy on personnel. Make sure your policy's current, all adhering to it. But what would I do? Again, it'd be very similar. Make sure that your evaluation process and your professional development process, with a professional development plan. If you're going to have a professional development plan and you tell the teacher, the administrator, okay, here are some activities I want you to conduct to improve your performance. I have to be ready as superintendent to make sure I'm providing that. If I tell them, I'm going to get more laptops, or send the principal to some training somewhere. I mean, I have to say, I'm going to provide that. I'm willing to provide that. So, you know, the thing to do is make sure, if you're going to ask someone to improve and say, here's what you need to do to improve, then as superintendent, I hope the board would support me on this. We need to give them the resources that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin.
Yes, sir.
On student behavior is a major issue with MPS. How would you propose to shape student behaviors? And in addition, will there be support to teachers for students who are a constant disruption to the learning environment?
First of all, just from my experience as superintendent, I recommend a uniform code of conduct, you know, for the entire school system, and make sure that it is adhered to. You know, one of the greatest complaints that teachers have is discipline and students not learning. And when you're dealing with discipline, you have to be consistent, be fair, and always make sure that you're keeping an open line of communication with the parents of where there are issues. And if a child needs help, you know, we need to get them help, you know, and I understand the school system. I know you've got the task force initiative going. You're partnering with Samaritan Counseling. And to revisit this, to help maybe control this, when this is back where, you know, I talked about an educational program that renews the culture and the climate of the school. Research has indicated in these programs, and we want to look at some of the most successful ones, is your discipline referrals actually began to drop. And but as far as a student, I mean, just this morning as at the meet and greet, you know, someone made an example, and I said, I may just use that example, and I am. So I'm still in this one. This one's not mine. It's like, if we're sitting in a court of law today, and you're disruptive in the courtroom, that judge is going to remove you from that courtroom, and you could allow contempt of court, you're allowed to spend a few days in jail, you know. But it's almost like, you know, in a classroom, if someone is just a habitual offender, and it's disrupting the educational process, remove that person. But I mean, first thing we want to do, let's look at an alternate setting. What type of help does this child need? I know I watched the state superintendent interviews a couple of weeks ago, and I know it was brought up a lot about, you know, partnering with mental health, and that's something that I did in Demopolis. We partnered with West Alabama Mental Health, and I know we had extra programs through the Gear Up grant. I know you're aware of that. I actually, I helped, Demopolis was in that. Your former superintendent, I went with her. We all went to Philadelphia a couple of years ago, and to the training there. So there's funding available through that grant, but it's, yes, I mean, if in order to protect instruction and allow quality teaching and learning in the classroom, if you need to remove one, that's fine. But when we do remove that student, we've got to deal with and address whatever is causing the issue with this child. And because we do not want to fail any child.
Thank you.
Well, that goes right along with my question. Hi, I'm Melissa Snowden.
Yes, ma'am.
It says, what experience do you personally have with alternative schools for disruptive students? And what measures have you found that when put in place, work to change the disruptive behavior for better?
When I was in Pike County, we worked and we actually constructed a separate site that was an alternative site. It was a new site. We made sure that it was state of the art. It had the technology it needed. And we used various instructional, like the Renaissance education programs, to make sure that they were on task, and the teachers from the schools were actually sending to make sure that the lesson plans were current, what was being taught through the online program. And basically what you had was facilitators who were there and to monitor the discipline, and it needs to be a quality learning environment. At the same time, I mean, I'm not trying to be, it doesn't need to be an enjoyable experience. It needs to be somewhere, hey, I probably don't want to come back here. You know, maybe you have a cubicle and a little wall there. Yeah, your friend's over here, but you can't see him or her, you know? And so, and so it needs to be, you know, a firm environment, but it also needs to be a learning environment. And you need to make sure you have caring and compassionate facilitators of the alternative school. And that's an excellent time, you know, have extra space, and that's where you allow your Samaritan counseling and those agencies that you're partnered with, and the mental health agencies, you know, they can come in during that time, and we might pull the child away from his or her instruction for a minute, but let's face it, the instruction by itself wasn't working out at school. We're gonna give, I know we're taking you away from that English lesson for a minute, but let's go over here and let's work with the counselors and let's see what's causing this problem here. You see what I'm saying? So, that's what I do, but I do support alternative learning settings, and they're effective if utilized properly, and I have a lot of experience with that, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Griffin, for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
My question to you is, how will you, as the superintendent, build relationships with the board, the community, and the staff?
Open door policy, approachable. I'll be transparent. Just with my experience with school board, I always, regular communications, but I always sent out a detailed Friday report to remind everyone of everything that transpired that week and was going on. So maybe a helpful reminder. By typing it up, it helped me not to forget anything. By sending it to you, maybe it'll be some assistance to you as well. And so it's easy to forget things. But as far as in the community, you'll find I like to be visible. Always participate in civic functions, and I mean, I want to be an advocate for the school system and an advocate for public education everywhere that I go in the community. And developing that rapport and working with business and industry and the Chamber of Commerce and Economic and Land Development, that helped me through my tenure as superintendent, like to attain additional funding. Like we worked with them and partnered with them on a lot of grants that we wrote, and it really helped the Demopolis City Schools when I was there. But it's visibility, it's rapport, and just I want people to know and get the vibe from me that I'm doing what's in the best interest of students.
This is me again. Describe your leadership style and give examples that demonstrate you using that style in your previous district.
I would have to say, you know, I'm a lifelong learner, progressive. I'm contextual. You know, I always consider the context in which something occurs. You know, no two situations are alike, even though that they may look that way. But in the in the school system I was at, you know, when I arrived, we weren't having any financial woes, but you know, we were on the border of moving in a negative direction. The stimulus money was running out, and that's been a few years ago. And so what we did, worked closely with the board and worked closely with the staff and the community and the leadership of the community, whether it be the city council and the economic land development and the Chamber of Commerce. And we worked diligently, and there's another group called the Business Council, worked diligently to promote people to shop DMOP is what we called it. And we actually raised the tax revenue $630,000+ just over the course of a couple of years. In a city the size of Demopolis, that's significant. And also, I work diligently with these groups to write grants. And writing grants is actually a hobby of mine. I have several hobbies. That just happen to be one of them. I take pride in it. And of course, grant writing will be a major component of my administration. But you'll find that sometimes on a grant, I'll just tell everybody, hey, I gotta have what I need. I'll call you if I need. I'll do this one. I'm working on this one myself, you know. I'll do it in my spare time. But just while I was there, in 5 years, I wrote $1.8 million worth of grants. And that's over $1 million more than what they paid me in salary and fringes. And so that's something I was very proud of. But my leadership style is open and working diligently to get people to buy in, considering the context in which something occurs and being transparent. But those qualities, in my opinion, are what led to the academic achievement. We had great financial success. I mean, I don't know if any of you were on the board back during 2010, 11, and 11, 12. That was pretty lean years. You remember the divisor raise over Mrs. Snowden? I see her shaking her head, yes. Despite that fact, you know, you lost teaching units, but you lost the other current expense and the capital outlay and the classroom instructional supply that went with them too, you know. It seemed like a newspaper, it seemed like maybe the newspaper forgot to mention that part, okay? You lost so many teaching units, but they didn't mention the rest of it. And a lot of people don't understand that. Well, despite that fact, through the grant writing and being a good steward of the monies, I was able to raise their reserves from 3.48 to 4.61 million while I was there. And that was during some lean times.
Times are still lean here.
Yes, sir. They're still lean in the Porterfield. Yes, and the outlook is gonna stay that way too.
I don't know, we're working on it, we need to do something about it, some
Yes.
things need to change. Yeah. I have the next question.
Yes, sir.
How would you ensure that policies and practices are implemented throughout this district and such that they are systemic and systematic?
Just consistent monitoring. You know, make sure that our policy is current with the state law and we're in compliance with state, federal, and local regulations. You know, regular, I at least want to have administrator meetings monthly, you know, and make sure that we're working diligently with our leadership at each school, that policy is being followed. And of course, when working with the board, working with you, you know, anytime recommendations are made, you know, I'll work diligently to reference the policy, you know, and to make sure that it's open and that you understand that, yes, we're adhering to our policy. And when I got to Demopolis, we were up for accreditation. And it'd been delayed a couple of years before my arrival, so basically we had until April to pull this off. It wasn't easy, and so I had like 10 months, you know. And but our policy manual, I know there was one copy, and it was a 3-ring binder about that thick. And I'm not sure if there was another copy. Nothing was online.
My Lord.
It was dated for sure. So what we did is we partnered with the lady from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and we made sure that our policy was current. We looked at the current policy we had and made sure that it was current. We were able to get a new policy, you know, plan developed and passed before the accreditation review. And so what I did is just constantly with the administrators, one of the line items we'd have used to be toward the end of the administrator meeting is I always hand out new policies and go over with them all the details of it. And we actually, did an actual study and analysis of the entire policy manual to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Erica?
Yes. What's the most important first steps a superintendent should usually take in a new district?
Delve into your finances and your instructional data to get an idea of right where you are, what is available. Outside of federal and state funding sources, what other funding sources do you have to come in? You take a look at that of your high-stakes instructional data, and you can quickly get an idea of some areas that you need to take a look at. The first thing that I did at Demopolis was I brought in the stakeholders. I took a look at this information. You gotta have a roadmap. You gotta have a game plan. They did not have a strategic plan. We developed a 5-year strategic plan, once again with specific goals, measurable, attainable, and timed, some benchmarks. And that was one thing I was very proud of. Just through 5 years, I worked through an entire strategic plan, the entire 5 years. And just about, I had a check in just about every box all the way down through there. See, you gotta establish a roadmap, and see, by bringing in the stakeholders, when you're developing your strategic plan, that's developing the rapport with the community that you need. And be upfront, transparent. And somebody asked a question a little bit earlier. Let's go back. First, do no harm. Watch your mouth. Follow due process. And adhere to the law. Follow the policy. And make your decisions in the best interest of teaching and learning.
All right, Lisa.
Okay, what was the student achievement level of the last district that you worked in?
It was high.
Oh, I did, you know what, I messed up.
No.
I read the other question, that's not it.
That's all right. Okay.
I messed up, this is
That's all
my
right.
question.
Let's just
Erase.
reset.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, in your last system, where did you leave your budget? In the green or the red? What was the student achievement of the last district you served as superintendent?
Left it in the green. I think I answered a minute ago. I believe these answers are correct. When I got there, it was 3.48 million. That's in the general fund plus reserves. And then in the, and I left it with 4.61. But that included, we redeemed a CD to make some upgrades at the high school. And that included a technology initiative. When I first got there, we were not 21st century. We put whiteboards in through capital outlay and through being a good steward of money, and grant writing, of course. And then when it comes to the academic achievement, I believe I answered it a little bit earlier. You can look on my resume, it should be page 2 right there. It kind of lines out. We took the graduation rate from in the lower 80s to 91%, but understand that during my tenure there, the graduation rate used to be measured on, okay, this many seniors started the 12th grade, this many graduated. That was your percent. You know, while I was there, that moved to the cohort where those who quit along the way were counting against you as well. I think that we were the only school system in the state that year they made that switch. We went from 88 to 89%, but the 89 had the cohort factored in where the 88 didn't. And that's something that I was very proud of. But I told you that and back at the 8th grade, 3 through 8 is sort of its own accountability area, and then you have grade 11, Of course, grade 12, you have your graduation rate, but I told you back, I think I mentioned it a minute ago, the 8th grade. The 8th grade is an excellent predictor of post-academic success. Students really need to be moving and achieving in grade 8, in all grades, but grade 8, you can really take a measure and make an honest assessment of where they are. But I was so proud of the resources that we provided through the technology initiative and the instructional techniques, individualized instruction. We did scaffolding, where you actually reteach a portion each day. We even tried something called backloading, where you develop a unit assessment first and teach back into the test. But our scores, 8th grade math was the 4th highest in the state, and reading was the 8th highest in the state in the 8th grade. And I mean, we were keeping good company. You know?
We certainly thank you very much for your,
Mr. Dean.
Yeah, the follow-up.
oh, yeah, the follow-up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
what was the local millage rate for support of public education in Demopolis?
18.
18?
18. And then had 2 referendums that brought in the neighborhood of about $650,000 a year on a budget of 20 million.
Right.
So the referendums were real good. In fact, all it was just a renewal of a referendum, and they just recently, I'm not there anymore, of course, but I know they just recently renewed one. But they renewed one right when I got there, because every 10 years, I was lucky. I didn't have to get out and campaign for that one.
Right.
But I you know, being in civic organizations and speaking, I was always talking about how important those referendums were. And
Right.
I was real glad to see it pass a while
Good.
back. And I know that, you know, the state requires attend meals, you know, some school systems support, you know, some areas, you know, that provide more millage, you know.
Thank you.
Well, again, we appreciate your coming out and taking the time. Is there anything else you would like to leave with us? Closing remarks?
I thank you for having me today. I'll tell you, I'm passionate about teaching and learning. I retired from Demopolis a couple of years ago, and right now I work in post-secondary education, so I have pre-K experience all the way through post-secondary. I do admissions and recruiting for Lincoln College Technology. And I work a third of the state Montgomery's in. And I visited a lot of schools for the college. And I've been in the classrooms, presenting to the students. I've been in the homes of students in Montgomery, Alabama, helping them get their financial aid started, working on scholarships, transitioning them into post-secondary education. I have students up there right now, colleges in Nashville. Some bright students here. And I see some bright students in some of the schools that are struggling. You have my word. You have my word that together we will turn that around. And I'm 48, about to be 49. And I can give you stability and longevity. I will be in this for the long haul. And I thank each of you today.
Well, we certainly thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, you got one more. I thought she went to kindergarten.
You come on down here and tell me. I got that quick.
The last couple of years, they had not been a very good team. And now they're doing really well. So last year was bad.
Are they gonna be somewhere to play on?
They're just tied in on first place.
That is good news. Hey. I've been using that hard tissue. I've been using that hard tissue.
Okay, you got some tissues?
Yeah.
Kim, when I go out to recruit,
She wants to teach.
Is she?
Oh, wait a minute. Watch kids from there?
Oh, yes.
And y'all need some kids, watch some kids. Oh, yeah, that's.
District 1? It goes, I understand it goes from
Deal with everything. Sometimes deal with everything.
Caroline. Comes over and picks up Somerset. And that's weird, it comes over Somerset, so it picks it up, comes back, and does Lake Forest. Then does, what's that little park place right there behind Macklemore? And it goes one side of West Ferry. And then like the other, I think West Ferry is cut off. I think it is. I think it's just one side. And then it goes down to your, that little College Grove area, Delrada, all the way down to Capitol Heights.
Hey, look, work from home. Not gonna do any work now. Just give me the money. Right. Yeah.
And I did, I'll share this.
Didn't you say that thing was canceled?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I just had.
Yeah, it's
Mayor, what's tonight?
It's gonna be a Greater Washington Park. We're gonna have a forum at Greater Washington Park.
What were you gonna say?
It's council.
Yeah,
At Greater
till the
Washington.
29th.
That's correct. You got the information yesterday.
You want me, I need to give it to you?
I got it. I
Okay.
just told Mary. And I told Mary I was just so happy. I'm drained. I've been running enough.
I know, it was the Lord's divine intervention, because I couldn't have gone
You
tonight.
better know it. Because I've been, hey, look, I've been so busy this week, it's unimaginable.
It's amazing.
No, Lord, I tell you what, we need a break, man.
Hey, Mary,
Yeah, I did.
she's got the thing with the advertisers.
Oh, yeah.
All the ones right there for her district.
Yeah, but I like that little lead. I like what she had to say the other night. Young lady said that she was still Democrat. They're gonna have two guys. The lady was sitting on the end that said she was a widow.
I thought she was in Durham's district. Is she out of it? She's
I
in
got her in touch with Kevin and told her.
She's sweet.
Yeah, she is. And she's data oriented and she works with the state.
It's not near.
Non-emotional,
Not
just
emotional,
calm.
The letter. Robert, are we ready? No,
No, give Ellie a little minute. Please. Give Ellie a minute, before she, hurry up, before she mess up something. Erica, so you doing really?
But it, what do you, I mean, you just want, you want to keep that as one?
And the stimulator is.
Oh, but you do know that.
Okay, let's do that.
She has to go to the bathroom. She had to go to the restroom. Oh, yeah. Man in that. Robin and I were not at the meet and greet because we were at a funeral until 5 minutes before this meeting.
Okay, I understand.
Let's make a deal. What deal? What kind of deal? What kind of deal, young man? Where did you show up from? Don't like trying to be nice. I do my best. I do owe my car. I love you too, but don't be so hard on me. I know you will. I know you will.
Me too sometimes.
Ready? Good afternoon, Dr. Moore. We certainly appreciate your interest in applying for a position of superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools. And we certainly appreciate your dedication and commitment to public education. And as you're aware, we're here today to go through an interview process. And each of our board members will be asking you a question, then you give a response. And in the end, if you would like to share with us some other information, then feel free to do so.
Hi, how are you? I get the privilege of asking the first question.
Okay.
As the superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools, how would you create a culture of academic excellence in this district? And how have you done the same in previous districts?
Okay, let me start off by saying, again, thank you for the opportunity to interview with you, and also thank you for the opportunity to have been your interim superintendent for the last 3 months. So what I want to start off by saying is that I came in, and I've given you something there to look at as I answer these questions, but I came in trying to observe, listen, and hear, see what was going on in the district, because there were a lot of things that were happening, so you had a lot of moving parts. And so I tried to do a little assessment of what I was seeing and hearing. And so, of course, I did find that we had some issues with academics. So what I've done over the past 3 months, and I've tried to do a lot in a little bit of time, but I've actually worked with the staff to ascertain what some of the issues might be. We looked at the data that we have out there, and we've had people come in, disaggregate data, talk to principals and teachers about data. And so what I've done is with the staff, I've tried to put together some plans that whether I'm your superintendent or not, someone coming in can actually take these same plans and ideas and move them to the next level. So we know that it's important that the educational piece actually happens at the classroom level. That's where the rubber meets the road, as they say. Because the teachers and the students need to gel, and the teachers need to be able to look at the students and understand what is going on with them. We have to, as a district, I think, as board members and as superintendents, we have to make sure that the culture and the climate of the system is one of understanding that we are about educating students and meeting their needs. And that if they are not educated and if they don't have high academic standards, it will not happen for the students. Our students, we have to understand, will be competing with students and other young adults from around the world, not just in Montgomery, Alabama, not just in Alabama, not in the South, all over the world. And so we have to make sure that people who work for the district understand that the highest priority that we have is that of educating our students. And we have to support that in everything that we do.
Thank you.
All right, now, I know you all know your numbers by now. Look, I got to find, know your numbers by now.
Okay, Dr. Moore, first of all, thank you for being here, and I know I saw you at the meet and greet, and I didn't get to really talk to you because you had some people that you were already talking to, but, you know, you had mentioned the fact that, you know, thanked us for you being our interim, and I think you have, what I've seen in the last 3 months has been phenomenal, especially what you say at the end, let us know you do it at the end of every week. With that being said, the question I have is, if you want to bring about change in this district, what tools or strategies would you use to do so?
Okay, well, the first thing I think, again, the highest thing that we need to actually concentrate on would be that of student academic performance. And so if we want to bring about the change that's needed, we have to do a lot of training with our teachers and our administrators. The administrators are the leaders out in the schools. The teachers are there to educate our boys and girls. If you don't have those tools, which would be the training and the resources to go with that, and then the follow-up to go along with that, the mentoring and the coaching that goes along with it. If you look at any great team, football, basketball, soccer, whatever, you have a coach who's working with those athletes all the time. And so they're always there giving them advice, telling them how to do it better, telling them what works, what doesn't work, from what they have to do with their physical body down to the skills that they bring to the table. So we have to look at it the same way when we work with teachers and principals and people who are in curriculum and instruction. How do they go about doing their jobs? Sometimes we put people in places without giving them any additional training or help. It doesn't matter if you've risen to the level of being an administrator. There are still things that you need to know and do, and you need support in those areas. And so one of the things that I've done since I've been here is right now I have our people engaged in something called the Transformation Academy, and that is to have training on how to have rapid turnaround in your schools so that you can't wait 3 or 4 years to make it happen. You have to start making it happen right away. And so our principals and some of our other folks in curriculum instruction and leads have been in training. They've been to 2 sessions. They have 1 to go. And what they do is they actually take that information, those tools, back to the school, and they use and implement a lot of what they learned with their teachers, so that when you walk through and you observe, you're looking for certain things. And that's the kind of information we're sharing with our folks and helping them with that, so that, you know, it's like baking a cake. You know, if you have a recipe is one thing, but if you just throw it in there, you may not have a good cake. You have a so-so cake.
And thank you for serving as long as you served, and we didn't get a chance to come to the meet and greet, but our hearts were there. My question is 2-part. First part, what can a school district do about a marginally affected teacher and/or administrator? That's the first part. Second part, what will you do about a marginally affected teacher and an administrator?
Okay. Well, first of all, when you say, I think you said, what would the school do about it, marginally?
What can a school district,
School
what would
district,
Montgomery
okay.
County School
Yes, ma'am, I
District
got you.
do about it
Okay, so
marginally?
I'm gonna fold that into one
Okay.
question, if that's okay. The superintendent's job is to make sure that things happen in the school district. And so in one of the handouts that I gave you where I talk about my philosophy of education, I talk about challenging the status quo, which means you can't keep doing things the way you've always done them. And if something needs to be challenged, then you challenge it. You open up the door, you do it in a professional manner, you do it in a graceful manner. You can be diplomatic about it, but you have to address it. And so as a superintendent, you can't be afraid to do that. We have some evaluation tools that we've designed for our school district. We have evaluation tools for teachers. We have evaluation tools for principals and other administrators. So that has to be carried out to what we call fidelity, meaning we have to do it from the beginning to the end. We have to do everything that we're supposed to do with that evaluation. We take that information and we use it to help, in this case, say teachers improve. We help administrators improve because it will show areas of needed improvement. And you take that information, you don't just put that evaluation in a drawer and say, okay, we have it, that's the end of it. You actually then use it to help develop your staff development, your professional experiences that you might want to involve your staff in, so that that information is not just a piece of paper on the shelf somewhere. You use that information to help the whole system or the whole district become better. So those tools are out there, the evaluations out there, along with professional development. I think sometimes, again, we throw teachers in a classroom and we say, well, go for it. And we know they've been trained at colleges and universities, but when you hit the classroom, it's a lot different from what you see in your college and university training.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore, students' behavior, as you have come to learn, is a major issue with MPS. How would you propose to shape student behaviors? In addition, will there be support to teachers for students who are a constant disruption to the learning environment?
In many cases, some of the students have behaviors that they cannot control. And so we have to deal with them at that level. Then in some cases, students have not been trained about how you behave when you're out in school or in public and that kind of social behavior. So they have not had that training. So many times our teachers have to do that. Then there are some other things that are more societal. We talk about some training called restorative justice and that kind of thing, which I would like for our people to be involved in at some time, so that we can understand maybe some of the issues that come up with certain groups of students and why those things exist. And then when you move into the classroom, sometimes when we get through all of those things, we have the students know how to behave. We also have to deal with the fact that maybe some of the things that we do in the classroom just are not reaching the students because they have different learning styles, and we may have ADD and 504 and special needs and all kinds of variations within a classroom. And so it's hard for a teacher to know how to deal with all of those variations at the same time. And so we have to do some things to help our students and our teachers know how to work together. Of course, in some cases, you have to look at class size. Sometimes there may be a need for a certain group of kids to have a smaller class size. You have to make that assessment. And then, of course, you have to have, we have the policies and procedures that relate to good behavior and students who are not behaving well at a particular time. So we have policies and procedures that we implement, hopefully in a fair manner, so that we're not picking on certain segments of our society. We do know that research shows that there are some students in certain categories that are suspended or expelled more than others. And so that we need to be aware of, and we need to address that. It's an across-the-board thing. It's not always just bad behavior. There are things that are considered very bad behavior that we have to deal with, we cannot tolerate. But then even with that, with a student in particular, one student at a time, we have to deal with what caused that student to behave that way. And how can we help that student know and understand how you should behave when you're in school or in a classroom setting.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Moore, my question follows up on that. What experience do you personally have with alternative schools for disruptive students? And what measures have you found that, when put in place, work to change the disruptive behavior for better?
Okay, so in my experience as an educator, let me say, I've been a classroom teacher, I've been a principal, I've been lots of other things, and you've seen all that on my resume. But when I was, let's say, one time I was director of elementary for a system. and we put together a plan where we could help deal with disrupted elementary students. Because we hear about that all the time, and it's very sad when you hear about a young child who can't behave him or herself at school at third grade level or whatever. So we dealt with that. We had a plan where we could pull students out actually based on their behavior, but there was a screening process put in place. You know, a teacher couldn't just say, or a principal couldn't just say, send him over there to that place or send him over there. We didn't do it that way. We screened. We found out, you know, how was the student performing in class, kind of whether or not he was involved with DHR, mental health, or any of those other kind of social organizations that might help him. And then what have we done prior to making this referral? What other things have we tried prior to making that referral? And then we could make a decision about that student. As a superintendent, I work with the alternative school as the person with oversight. And we had what I believe to be a true alternative school in that it was just not punitive. It also had night classes for kids who wanted to come just because they wanted to get ahead or they wanted to catch up. Students who were maybe dealing with a psychologist who felt that this student needed to be in a smaller space for a short period of time. I remember one young lady whose both parents had been deployed at the same time, and she was living with her grandmother, and she was in a school that had about 2,000 kids, and it was just a little bit too much for her. So we worked out a plan where she could go to alternative school and keep up with all of her classes and graduate with everybody else. And then we had the ones for students who had behavior that was not acceptable, you know, fighting, cursing, being disruptive. But at the same time, we had the 4x4 curriculum for those students so that they could graduate on time if they were to do their work. We had kids who were going to be engineers who could go in and take some pre-drafting classes. So it was a true alternative, but we tried to let it meet the needs of all of the students in the district. So very familiar with putting one of those together.
Hello, Dr. Moore. How will you, as the superintendent, build relationships with the board, the community, and the staff?
That's a very important question. I think in today's environment and any other environment, but especially when we talk about dealing with the environment here in Montgomery and dealing with the Montgomery Public Schools, that there needs to be some real connections made between all of those entities that you named. Because, first of all, the school system represents the people who live and work in that community. They may not have children in school anymore, but for posterity, somebody educated them, and so then it's left up to the rest of us to continue to educate the students that come our way, even though they may not be our children or our grandchildren or whatever, they are our kids. They live in the same community. So in order to build those relationships, first of all, I think everybody has to just kind of settle down and breathe deeply and understand we're all in this together. It should never be adversarial between the superintendent and the board or between board members. It's not an adversarial situation. It is, we don't always have to agree with each other. We don't always necessarily have to like each other, but when we come together as a board, that's when we become, all 7 of us and the superintendent, we become a group that is there to do what is best for the children that people send to us every day. And if we forget about that and we become very personal in how we deal with it, then the relationship breaks down. And then we can't do what we need to do to make things better for our school system and for our children. I mean, we've all benefited in many ways. A lot of us went to public schools. And even if we went to another school that was not public, we have choices. But we're the 3rd highest employer in this county, Montgomery Public Schools. We're the 3rd highest, which means we have people who work for us and we have children who come our way all the time. If we did not have children who come our way, we would not be the 3rd highest employer. We would have far less. We'd be way down on the list, but we're the 3rd. So that means we have a duty when we become, board members and superintendents, we have a duty to the community and to the people that we, represent. And so, even as a board, as we individually vote or talk or whatever, we are representing the people who put us in office. And so, I'm thinking those people want us to represent them well and make good decisions. And if I'm elected as your superintendent or put in place as your superintendent, then you expect me to do certain things because I represent you. But I also represent 28,000 boys and girls. And I used to always say, once I become a superintendent, I become a mother to how many other kids you have in the system. And so I want all my kids to be treated right. And that's kind of how I see it.
Oh, it's me. I'm so sorry. Describe your leadership style and give examples that demonstrate you using that style in your previous district.
My leadership style is very invitational. I think I invite people to participate in whatever it is that I have to go about doing. So I talk to people on the staff. I talk to the people who are in all of the different areas in the central office. I talk to principals. I believe in bringing committees together to help figure things out so that I can hear everybody's angle. I think it's good that I've had a lot of experiences in a lot of different ways because when I have to make a decision, even though I bring in all those people, I can remember what it was like to be in second grade, believe it or not. I can remember what it was like to be a teacher. I can remember what it was like to be a principal or whatever. And so when I make decisions, I can think about how is this decision going to affect the people who are out there taking care of the kids on a daily basis. I can think about how is this going to affect the teacher, the second grade teacher, when we do this. How's it going to affect the principal? How's it going to affect the parents when we say this? And so I think if we go through all of those steps, when we finally come out with a decision, it's going to be one that we can live with. So my style is not authoritarian, although I know that at times you have to be authoritarian and say, no, this is what we're going to do. But it's not until we vet what we need to vet before I say, okay, I think this is what we're going to do with this.
I'm next. How will you ensure that policies and practices are implemented throughout the district such that they are systemic and systematic?
Okay, so one of the things that I do see in our system is that there are many things that we are not doing in a systemic way. And so we have a kind of a hodgepodge of things happening. And they're not necessarily bad things, it's just that not everybody's on the same page and kind of go off in different directions. So we're doing a lot of work on making systemic changes, training, etc., so that across the board we can have some systemic ways of dealing with issues. When you deal with 30,000 kids, 28, 29,000, whatever, you can't go off in all different directions. It just doesn't work that way. But the policies and procedures guide the school system. It's like your Bible, if you will. Those policies and procedures are approved by the board. The board looks at what the staff will bring to them, and they will determine whether or not they believe that this is a good way to go. We're revising the policy manual and bringing it up to date. And now, I say to people all the time, if we have policies and procedures, then I will support you if you're following the policy and the procedure. I don't care if the president calls and says, I want you to do something different. That's not how I operate. If we have a policy and a principal, for instance, is following that policy, I have no choice but to support that principle, because as a board, you've approved that policy, and that gives us our guidelines for operating on a day-to-day basis. Now, back to your question, if we are wanting to make sure that everybody is aware of and follows the policies and procedures, we have to kind of live by those same guidelines. We have to make sure that they know the policies and procedures, not that they memorize them. They know that there's something out there that gives them guidance. If you're not sure, go look it up. and become very familiar with it. We also, at certain levels, need to do some reviews, some reminders, go over those policies and procedures. We need to make sure that the principals who are leaders in the school understand what the policies and procedures are, and that they implement those policies and procedures fairly across the board in their school setting. Because we are a school system, but we have lots of little satellites out there. We all have to operate together. So familiarity with the policies and procedures, supporting the people when they do implement policies and procedures correctly. If we don't have one there, you can kind of forgive them if they make a mistake. But if a policy is there, then we need to make sure that they know what they are and they're very familiar with them, and we support them in implementing those policies and procedures.
All right now, children, I know you know your numbers by now.
I do. What's the most important first step a superintendent should usually take in a new district?
Well, if you look at, under that first plan that I gave you, the one that says Montgomery Public Schools, we will energize, okay. If you look at where I wrote down the first 30 to 60 days,
Yeah, I
what
see
I
that.
call making connections. So I've had an opportunity that some superintendents would not have coming into a district for an interview, in that I've been able to be here for a while and get to kind of know the lay of the land. And so I will tell you about some things that we've done already. As a superintendent coming in, first things that you do, you get to kind of observe and make evaluations about what's going on, use your information, and try to make those connections. Because even coming in as an interim, there was a lot I needed to know in order to be able to keep things moving until a new superintendent is selected. So I wanted to know already what was going on and what were some things that would help me make some crucial decisions. And so I had to identify some things. So if you look at the next slide, I run over the intervention information as much as I can find out about it. And some of you know, you probably know that I served on it as an interventionist also in Selma for about 3 years, almost 3.5 years, and worked with them. And then I looked at plans that you might have in place already. Strategic plans, I met with the cabinet members, I call them the chiefs, different places call them different things, but I call them the cabinet, and all of the head people, I met with them and we had lots of discussions. I met with them as a group, and I also met with them individually, depending on what department they were in, so that I could find out some of the lay of the land, what's going on in Montgomery Public Schools. And then I attended meetings. Sometimes I led the meetings, sometimes I just sat in the back and listened to what was going on in those different areas. And I reviewed some of the budgets. I looked at some data, and we talked about the closing of schools and changing zone lines, and so I participated in all of that work. I went to community meetings where you could find out more about what's going on, how people see things in Montgomery, what's important to them. Sometimes in my mind, I might not agree with them that this is so important, but to that person it's important. And so I need to use that as part of a filter. I met with your teacher advisory committees and your parent advisory committees. I'm working some with the mayor and his group, Envision 2020, 2040, so I can get to meet people and know people. And then I'm also working on the ASU advisory board. So people invite you, when you're a superintendent, they invite you to do lots of things. And so you can kind of pick and choose, but you really need to pick things that are going to help you do the best job that you possibly can. So it's when you first come in, you just collect information. You can call it data or whatever, because whenever you collect it, it's data of some sort. How are we performing? How are our students behaving? How many schools do we have? How many teachers do we have? All that information. That's sort of the first round of what you do within the first month to 2 months when you come into a district.
In your last system, where did you leave your budget? Was it in the green or the red? What was the student achievement of the last district you served as superintendent?
Okay, that's a twofold question. When I left the system, there was about $85 million in the budget for the school district. When you talk about the reserve, during the time that I was superintendent, a very honest answer was that when I took over, our reserve was below, it was about $500,000. I would bring it up to about 15 million, which was pretty much our requirement. And then we had proration about 3 to 4 times while I was superintendent. And we had a lot of local units, and so we would have to dip into our reserve and use it. So there would be times when the reserve was not where the state required it to be. The reserve is kind of like a savings account, and you have it there for emergencies. And because we had a lot of local units, because we had a lot of foreign languages, a lot of math classes, a lot of local teacher units that our board wanted to keep. And so the important thing to them was to keep those teachers. And so periodically our reserve would dip below what the state required. But I brought it back up more than once. And I brought it up to the level where it should be. It was not there when I took over. And so there were times when it was below where it should be, based on state requirements.
A follow-up to that is, what was the local millage in Huntsville that was collected for public education?
As I recall, it was about 27.5.
My Lord. My Lord.
That's why they had all those foreign languages.
They have everything.
We had about 5 foreign
They
languages,
can have everything.
Technology.
including Latin and Japanese.
I wish we could get up to 15, 20, somewhere, besides the minimum. You know, I'm just saying.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. We certainly appreciate you taking the time out, and certainly the dedication and commitment to public education. And as always, we give, if you want any closing remarks, present to the board, feel free to do so at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I would say I really have enjoyed working in Montgomery. And, you know, all of you know that I'm retired, but I've never officially retired from working. I've been doing lots of different works with public schools throughout Alabama, so I've never stopped working even though I retired from being a superintendent. But I've worked with superintendents and school districts, so I haven't lost that connection, even though I've been retired about 4 or 5 years. And so I see Montgomery as a challenge. It's not a challenge that I have to have. To be honest with you, it's something I like doing. And so if you select me to be the superintendent, then I would accept that challenge. And I would just like to say, if I may I ask the board a question?
Yes.
Okay, what I'd like to know from all of you or several of you is, how do you see yourselves in working with a new superintendent under the conditions that we would have to operate under at this point?
Mr. President, may I respond?
Go right ahead, that's just.
Well, first and foremost, I think that we would look for you to do a lot like what you've already done, knowing about the intervention and how to look at the state intervention and where we are and bridge those two together and really and truly get us out of the intervention and get us on the road where the students are achieving. And I would love for it to be like what you described in Huntsville, where we had so many foreign languages and maths and sciences and technologies, and really partnering with our community members and just bridging that gap between the community and MPS, like what you described, that they're all your children.
Yes, Lord. Go ahead, Ms. Dawkins.
Dr. Moore, one of the things that is important to me as a board member leaving is that we continue to strive to make Montgomery successful. Montgomery is the capital, we all know that. But you would not know that looking at the support we get. It's like we're the stepchild. And people tend to want to blame this board or our board for all of the troubles that we have. Now, we are responsible for some of it, yes. Violent, yes. But we're not responsible for all of it. And one of the things that I think this audience knows as well as the rest of the world, had we been working on improving education over the last 10, 12 years, we'd be in a much better position than we are today. It wasn't until economic development started biting us where it hurts that the effort was being pushed on improving education. Any big business that wants to come to Montgomery or looks at Montgomery, the first thing they want to know is how's your educational system. We know that. And I think the people that are blaming us right now know that too. But again, our system has been torn up for a long time. And from my perspective, no one seemed to take enough initiative to try and fix it until it started hitting us where it hurts all of us the most. I intend to continue to work as a part of this system from the outside because I know there's some good teachers, administrators, and wonderful students within this system that are being given a black eye because somebody's position, I got it, Mary.
All right now. All right.
Somebody's position is being threatened. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We can make this better. And we, all of us, need to work together to do that.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dawkins. Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you. I didn't expect you to ask a question. Nobody did. And I just want to thank you for allowing us to speak because what you asked was a very real question. We do have to move forward. And we haven't moved. We had two people today. One person came in and he said, the words he said was, he brought up 4 other schools that were in intervention. He said Midland was in for 2 years. Selma was for 2 years. I know he said Birmingham, the one that fought it the most, was in it for 4 years. That made a lot of sense to me. What Ms. Dawkins just said, the fact that she owned at least part of the problem was awesome to me. It's the first time I've heard anybody from the board own it. And what I will say is this, is if we could get the big eagle that shouldn't be there, AEA, out of the way, we can move forward. And if we quit using them as a crutch and a place to go with our excuses, we will move forward.
Well, to respond to that just a little, and I certainly want to thank you again, Dr. Moore. But Dr. Moore, if it had not been for AEA, you wouldn't be sitting there today because we would be still without superintendents. Matter of fact, we are still working without legal counsel at this point in time. Something by law states that the board should hire. And we had to fight tooth and nail when this board was dismantled. You know, we got to understand there were some problems. There were some things going on that caused us to be in the situations that we're in. And this board was being dismantled. And due to the efforts on the behalf of AEA, we did not have legal counsel. And when people go and think they are above the law, then we need someone to come in and step up to the plate for us. And I'll say again, I appreciate what AEA did. We have now restored structure. We have now been given the opportunity to get legal counsel. We have now been able to even get CSFO officer, which all of those, while we were under the individual, we were not given the opportunity or the privilege of having. So again, I want to give accolades to AEA because we were in the absence of legal counsel. Now, back to Melissa. I'll be finished in a minute. Melissa, I think the other night we made it clear, and if we go back and look at it, and the one thing I do recall, in 2008, by state legislation, we went into proration in 2008. We stayed in proration 3 years in a row. And even at this point in time, the level of funding that we had before 2008, this district, we have not reached that level of funding, even as I speak. Melissa, the other night, we have how many districts in this state?
We have 137.
137.
And we're ranked 104 in
And we rank,
funding.
and we are the capital of the state of Alabama. In terms of funding, you've got 137 it is?
Yes, sir.
And we are at, in terms of funding, 109. So if we're going to be the best there is in the state, it would seem as though someone would recognize, since we were in proration, since we haven't reached that level of funding again, someone should recognize that we are strapped with funding and something needs to be done with funding in order to reach these levels that we're talking about reaching. I'm certain with what has been done as far as advanced ed, and we have been threatened, as you know, with respect to the possibility of losing accreditation. But it is hopeful, and I believe that when those things are identified, then we can move forward, and this district will not be in jeopardy, if some has mentioned or placed out there, that we would be in jeopardy of losing accreditation, which I doubt very seriously. But
That is something we need to deal with.
Absolutely.
We'll deal with advanced ed, they will give us the information that they need to give us about what we need to do, and we'll move forward.
appreciate that.
We can handle that, I think.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Well, to answer your question, Dr. Moore, one of the things, and it's interesting you would ask that question, because before I went to the meet and greet, I actually stopped by a school in my district to talk to the teachers, because I knew they wouldn't be able to take off work. They're teaching our students. And I asked them that very same question. And I said, do you think we even need a superintendent in intervention? What's your thoughts? And they said, of course, we need somebody that's going to be an advocate for us. And they said they wanted someone to build bridges. In fact, one of the questions I asked was from the teachers that I spoke with. It was the number 10. That's their question. Another thing that I would want from a superintendent while in intervention is to continue to be a champion for the students in our districts, and to encourage parents to be our partners, because without them, none of what we do is going to be made possible. So we need their support in so many ways. So that's what I'm looking for in a superintendent as we go through intervention.
Dr. Moore, we have said many times that we are complicit in this. We ask for state intervention because of our class sizes, because of our financial stability, because of the discipline, because of safety, all of those things and more. We asked for those things. We were hoping that the state would come in and help us with that. We have never, ever said that we were not complicit in this, because we know we are. And intervention in one way has helped in some instances, in that we were privy to a lot more information than we are getting now. And you can't do anything about anything if you don't know what's going on. We know now what's going on. In the few months that you've been here, you have enlightened us even more about things that were going on in our system. All I would ask of any superintendent is put our students first. We talk about finances and all of that, but if we take care of our children, the finances will fall in place, because if people see that we are about our students and the well-being of our students, they will come in and do whatever. And you're not going to get that until they find out or really believe that we are about the students in this system. We talk more about finances than anything else, but we got to get laser focused on how all of this is affecting our children. My granddaughter is just 10 years old, and you should hear the conversation that she has with me about what is being said about, she said, Gigi, do they just not like y'all at all? You know, and it's not about us, it's about them. And until we put them and laser focus on them and concentrate on what's gonna help them to be better citizens, better educators. We're just gonna be on a treadmill, just going at 100 miles an hour and not getting anywhere. So the next superintendent must be focused on our children.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Any more questions for us?
Well, we
Sorry,
certainly appreciate, we certainly appreciate your coming out and participating in our, search firm and the interview. And we appreciate, again, your commitment and dedication to public education. And certainly in the positions that we're in now, we need the best that we can get in order to move forward. So we appreciate your coming in. If there are no other questions, I think, yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, I move that we move into executive session to discuss.
Well, I was gonna let her leave first.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm
I was gonna
trying to
let her
get this
leave
thing
her.
rolling. Thank you, Dr. Moore. I'm sorry,
I was gonna let
Mr.
her-
President.
Okay, that's okay. When she leaves, we're gonna make that a motion.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
You all right. That was the next item on the agenda, for us, listen.
Yeah.
At this time, we need a motion to move into executive session for the sake of a good name and character. Need a motion at this
So
time.
moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we move into executive section for the sake of good name and character. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, are we going to room 202?
Amen.
Okay.
And how
And
long
we
are
all
we
need
gonna-
to bring our
Bring your
papers,
paperwork.
right?
Absolutely.
And we're,
Bring all your paperwork.
are you
No.
expecting a vote when you come back?
Gotta carry the vote, gotta carry the vote,
Oh, all those.
Say, he needs to say that.
Okay, I will.
carry the vote, please.
All right, those, no discussion? Those in favor, let's see by show of hands. Boy, it's unanimous. All right.
No.
The board will go into executive session to discuss good name and character. We will be in executive session for approximately.
3 days.
No, Lord, don't say that, Mary.
Give or take a week.
No, I think about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh,
Shouldn't take
no.
us that long. During the executive session, we want to let you know no votes will be taken. And at this time, we'll move into room 202. Good afternoon for about the third time. We will now convene the special call meeting. No votes were taken during the executive session. We did tally the scores. We did have, as a matter of fact, Ms. Rose helped me tally them, isn't that right? You did help me tally the scores. The mayor's representative. And we would want the one that has been selected by total tally to come forward and give us a word or two in the selection. I don't think you need to get them all. You need to give just the one we call them. Do you think we need to get them all? They've already given them all. No, we just get them, you just get the one that we call name for the top tally scored here. That's the one we want to come give some words. And that would be Dr. Ann Moore, if you would, please. For what?
Yeah, we need a vote now that we've come out.
Okay. Okay, go ahead and make a motion.
Mr. Porterfield, I'd like to make a motion that we offer Dr. Ann Roy Moore a contract to be our permanent superintendent.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we offer Dr. Ann Roy Moore the position of superintendent. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, those who are in favor, let's see by a show of hands. It is those who oppose, show of hands. The vote is 6-1. Passed with 6-1.
Mr. Porterfield, while we wait for
Uh-huh.
Dr. Moore to come in, I just would like to say publicly that I thought we had some really good candidates.
I know we did.
I
They were all
enjoyed the
good.
process.
Absolutely.
And that it was interesting that the mayor's designee, I think, was pretty much in line with what we decided as well. And,
Absolutely.
I just want to thank everybody that was a part of getting the candidates together, and I thought the questions were really good this time, too. So I'll stop talking, but I just wanted to say that
I
publicly.
like, Mr. President,
Go
I
ahead.
like the fact that we had our stakeholders to meet and greet them, talk with them, and then submit questions that we did use. Even the question that the mayor, a couple that he sent in was combined with
Thank you.
our stakeholders.
Right, and I think for the, guys at first, and Ms. Rose, and I know you, what's your name again? Yeah, Greg. And, I know at first I was concerned, but I'm so happy now that we did do what we did, and you guys played a role too and helped us out in that decision process. We do appreciate you being a part of that.
Thank you. On behalf of the city, the mayor's representative was treated properly as required by the agreements that are in effect. Of course, she took no part in the decision.
No.
And of course, no decision was actually made.
Thank you for that. We appreciate you here. All right. And Ms. Rose, we appreciate you also. Thank you. Is Dr. Moore coming in? All right.
I feel sorry for her. She had three of the most amazing caregivers. I mean, she
Ask her, does she want us to leave these these red folders with
Board members, you'll see, here's your CSFO packet thing right here on top, this 3-link binder, that's for next Wednesday.
my friend? I'm concerned about these papers.
Yes, I will take those.
with everything in it. What about the handouts that they gave us?
May I have those red folders
They're
with all the
coming.
information that's in
They're
it,
coming
please?
right now, dear.
I didn't know they were coming, dear.
I take care of business.
What about all this stuff?
That's the CSFO stuff that they got in there for you.
Oh,
You
they already
just put your
changed it out.
CSF, yeah, they've changed it
Oh,
out.
okay.
You got the you're gonna take the CSFO stuff
I
out.
got it.
All I need is that red
Here,
folder.
I'm holding them.
Melissa got another red folder? Melissa has one red folder. She didn't have Melissa's. I'm trying to get these folders.
We're passing them down if you just go sit down, dear.
I'll sit down.
Thank you, dear.
Yeah.
Mr. Stokes has something to say to you.
Oh, yeah?
No, why they're upset.
Take up the tally sheets.
I think they're in there.
They're in those papers, yeah. All of them should be in there.
They're at the very last.
Come in.
All right, boys, can y'all stand up? Can y'all stand up? Can y'all stand, please?
Stood up for her.
What's wrong? You too slow to move?
Now, is that yours or that
But
mine?
we just want to have a word or two from you before we move on.
Oh,
and
you
close-
have
and
mine.
close the meeting.
Well, so I'm assuming that means you, yes.
We wouldn't have had you in here otherwise. Yeah.
Let me say thank you very much. It's very exciting to be in a position where I can do something that I love to do. And so I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I mean, and I'm also looking forward to working with the students and trying to make things better for them and to especially improve their academic achievement, because that's the most important thing.
Amen.
There's no way in the world that we have 28,000 kids who can't perform.
That's
Okay.
right.
I just don't believe that.
Appreciate it.
So we'll do everything we can, and I thank you for trusting in me and giving me the opportunity
Well, we appreciate you.
to do what we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next meeting dates will be May 9th, 2018, 1 p.m. We have a special called board meeting for CSFO interviews. That will be at the central office. We will also have on May 15th, board training at this central office. And Tuesday, again, we will have on May 15th, a combined board meeting, which will start at 5 p.m. This meeting here is now adjourned.